have Deborah Mayers. She's here.
Awesome, welcome.
We have two new members are here, present. Kim Bolin.
Present by telephone.
All right. Vice Chair Metcalf.
Present.
Commissioner Leonard.
Present.
Commissioner Bacon.
Present.
Chairman Halby.
Present.
Mr. Chair, we have a quorum.
Full house.
We have 7 members.
Love it. Love it. Good job, guys. All right. First item on the agenda is approval for minutes for November 8th.
Chairman Halby, I make a motion that we approve the minutes as printed and distributed.
A second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Oh, cool. Thank you.
So new business. So, Bill.
I can go right into it.
Mr. Chair, we're really excited. We're covering water tonight, really important issue for Arizona, and we have our utility partners here, and they'll be speaking to you and giving you the best information we have with Arizona Water and Global Water. Both are here. And Phil will start off real quick and cover some of the general plan, and then we'll go right into their presentation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, just to cover the basis, how we've started out the 4 prior meetings. No laser. Hey, do you have your laser pointer with you? You have your laser pointer? All right. We're the 21st century. All right. This is the cover of our 2025 general plan. The general idea is that through these meetings, the 5th of 6, tonight is water resources. The last one will be next month, environmental. And once these are completed, this will filter into the new general plan here. Just a quick little summary thing, and then we'll go right into our our partners with regard. Too many times I do that. Anyway, the general plan water element tonight. Arizona statute requires the general plan to be updated every 10 years. It is the city's policy document. It interfaces with the zoning and building codes and with other municipal code sections. Categories, as seen here, have been land use, circulation, open space, trails, growth areas, and cost. Tonight is water resources, and once again, the last and final segment will be the environment on January 10th, 2024. In July of 2023, the City Council approved a citizen participation plan, which is what we're presently going through. It's 6 months covering these topics, which will then go before the Planning and Zoning Commission in March of 2024 for their recommendation to the City Council, who will then take it up in June of 2024, and if then approved, will go before the voters in November of 2024. Notices and monthly updates with commentary sheets have been sent to state, county, regional government, private and nonprofit entities, over 200 emails to individual private sector persons, emails to department heads within the city to share amongst their employees, and posters and flyers distributed on bulletins in public areas in and around Coolidge. And as Gilbert alluded to, this particular evening, we have Arizona Water Company and Global Water Resources here to actually present the water element for us tonight. So at that juncture, I'll call upon Melinda with the chair's okay.
Welcome. Please.
Yeah, just go ahead and turn it on. There you go.
Thank you. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Thank you.
Ken here?
Ken, can you hear Melinda?
Hello? Aha. Good evening, Chairman Halby and Commissioners. My name is Melinda Whittington.
Can you hear that? Okay, all right.
I'm a Senior Water Resources Analyst at Arizona Water. Thank you for the opportunity to present this evening. Tonight, I will be presenting a summary of the topics that are found in the Water Resources element of the 2035 General Plan. The chapter is included in your meeting packet. Next slide, please. In 2013, Arizona Water Company prepared the Water Resources element of the 2025 General Plan. Now, in 2023, we are taking the lead on the 2035 Water Resources element. This presentation begins actually with a look back at the 2025 plan. Oops. It's okay. We'll take a look at 4 topics: service providers, water supplies and infrastructure, water connections and demand, and the integrated demand management program. Next slide. So in this slide, we have a map which is pending some updates because you've had some additions to your water service area. But what we wanted to highlight here are the 5 water service providers in the planning area. And we're going to kind of do it a little bit David Letterman style. We're going to go 5 to 1. Starting with service area number 5 is Woodruff Water Company. And that particular system has 2 wells associated with it at this time and is planned for development in the near future, I believe. Water system number 4 is Global Water Resources Santa Cruz Water Company, also known as Picacho Cove. It's a new service area created by Global Water. It provides water service to the Coolidge Industrial and Jobs Corridor, commonly referred to as the Inland Port of Arizona, or IPAZ. It's located along State Route 87 in southern Coolidge. Global Water has been providing water to Nicola for about a year now and will provide wastewater service through its sister company, Global Water Palo Verde Utility Company, once wastewater flows from Nicola and others in the IPAZ are expanded. Water company number 3 is Cactus State Utility Operating Company, and it is formerly known as Carter Water Company. It has 1 registered well and 11 connections today. And then service area number 2 is called AVM 2005, and it's formerly Signal Peak Water Company. So AVM 2005 is a water customer of Water Company's Pinal Valley system. Arizona Water Company sells AVM 2005 treated water from the Pinal Valley system, and then AVM 2005 distributes that treated water to its customers within its service area. AVM 2005 is charged an ACC-approved rate called sales for resale. And in 2022, AVM 2005 received about 9 acre-feet of water from us at Arizona Water Company. The system has 37 connections. And for those who might not be aware, an acre-foot of water is equal to about 326,000 gallons.
Madam, Mr. Chair, staff, I don't know if we want questions as we're going through the program or if we want to wait till
That's
the
fine
end
if you'd like to stop me anytime.
for the chair.
Yeah, go ahead.
Mr. Chair, I want to make sure I'm hearing you selling treated water?
Correct.
Okay, so non-potable?
It is potable water. It's treated.
Okay, so I just want to make sure it's clear. My background is when you say treated, I assume effluent.
Oh, no, it's treated drinking water.
Okay, so potable,
Yes.
all right.
Yes. Arizona Water Company does not have a wastewater component. We only treat and serve drinking water.
That was my understanding, Mr. Chair. I just wanted to make certain you hadn't started something new.
Of course. Thank you, Commissioner
I'm
Leonard.
glad you asked because it did raise my eyebrows and I'm like, what?
Okay. I apologize. I'm
Yeah.
sorry. I could have been more clear.
Thank you.
Sure.
And actually, how many wells are on 4?
Actually, I would have to defer to Mr. Fleming. I don't know how many.
Oh,
So, just to answer the question here, the active wells currently are 2, but there's dozens of wells on that old property that now is owned by Canal Land Holdings. We've done a well inventory of all of them, determined which wells can be converted for domestic use. Right now, we're looking at 3 additional.
okay. Thank you.
Thanks. So lastly, company number 1 is Arizona Water Company. Our Pinal Valley water system serves over 68 square miles inside the planning area boundary. The Pinal Valley System's Certificate of Convenience and Necessity, or CCN, extends over 273 square miles across the valley. The purpose tonight, though, for the Coolidge 2035 plan, we have only taken a look at infrastructure inside of the planning area boundary and also deliveries inside of the boundary. So while the system is interconnected across the entire valley, we're only looking at infrastructure and demands and deliveries inside the. Next slide. So for right now, I just want to kind of highlight a couple of positive public-private partnerships that have occurred recently between the City of Coolidge and Arizona Water Company. One example is the Coolidge Water Tower Lighting Project that was jointly funded in 2019. This project shows our civic commitment to the city with a functioning water tower that has lighting options that can be programmed with a variety of colors and designs. Additionally, Arizona Water Company has relocated its Coolidge Operations Center to the city-owned Artisan Village on Arizona Avenue. I'm sorry, Arizona Boulevard, I apologize. The new Operations Center was completed in 2020 and houses a full complement of staff, including customer service representatives, metering staff, water production, and distribution staff, along with management. Next slide. So we've discussed a little bit about service providers in the planning area, and we have a couple of great projects that the city and Arizona Water Company have completed together. But now we'll turn to the topic of water in the Coolidge planning area specific. The focus here will be on Arizona Water Company and the city of Coolidge. Currently, water supplies in the planning area include groundwater supplies, effluent, Colorado River water via the CAP canal, also known as cap water, and surface water. We'll hold here for just a second. So Arizona Water Company serves groundwater and CAP water to customers in Arizona Water Company has 2 contracts for CAP water in the Pinal Valley service area. Those 2 contracts are 10,884 acre feet per year, and 2,000 acre feet of that water is earmarked for the Coolidge planning area. The surface water component is Gila River water that is delivered to agricultural users inside the San Carlos Irrigation and Drainage District. Also on this slide, I've included a photo of the City of Coolidge wastewater treatment plant. The use of effluent as a renewable water source is a very hot topic today, with the discussion of shortage on the Colorado River in particular. In 2022, the city received a groundwater savings facility permit that allows it to deliver to farms that grow non-food crops and accrue long-term storage credits. The process of recharging the effluent supports the aquifer and provides a water source to farms in the area. Plus, long-term storage credits can be accrued and sold. Any questions?
Mr. Chair, Ms. Worthington, and my apologies, I didn't recognize until now Ms. Rossi's in the audience. Hi. A couple of questions on that slide.
Of course.
You mentioned Colorado River water and then surface water. What other surface waters is Arizona Water Company including in its portfolio?
Commissioner Leonard, we are not adding any additional water at this time. We're not delivering. The reason I mentioned the surface water is really the Gila River the Gila River water that is delivered to agricultural users within the planning area boundary via SCID, the San Carlos Irrigation and Drainage District. So we're not delivering surface water, in-state surface water. We're only delivering Colorado River water.
Okay, but just to make sure I'm clear though, Mr. Chair, so clarity is you're not, in your water supplies, Arizona Water Company, and then again, presenting on behalf of the city, certainly there's groundwater component, there is an effluent, Colorado River water, surface water. You're not suggesting, or the slide isn't intended to indicate that these are water supplies with Arizona Water Company. These are the water supplies you defined in the city.
In the planning area, that is correct, Commissioner
Okay.
Leonard. Thank you.
Then my question of staff is, how are we securing the CAP supplies and/or the water that might come from the Gilas or San Carlos for future use?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Leonard, the allocation of the CAP, it comes through Arizona Water, and it is being stored underground in the new recharge basins that are being put in. So I forget what the number is, but there's so many acre feet that goes into I don't know if you were here when we did the ribbon cutting on that, but it was a few years back. And it's a facility that's pretty close to the CAP. So the Arizona Water Company is the one who, the city's portion of the CAP, and then puts it in a recharge. Is that correct? I think I'm correct.
Mr. Lopez, that is exactly correct.
Okay.
Yes.
Just want
So
to make
is
sure.
it, Mr. Chair, is it Gila water only, or is it Gila and San Carlos?
Oh, no, this is CAP water.
No, this CAP.
San Carlos has a CAP, potential CAP entitlement as well. The reason I ask the question is when we're talking about a general plan and we mention supplies coming from SKID or others, the assumption I want to make certain we're not making is somehow those waters as a part of future growth supplies.
The only way they could do that is if the state legislature changed the laws. I mean, the laws are governed by, the groundwater laws and everything that exists now that Arizona Water, the experts are here in the room. So right now, the CAP being put in the ground, I mean, can be pulled up later as drinking water.
Mr. Lopez, just for clarity, my district stored over 1.5 million acre feet of CAP. Very familiar. It's not a question of the functionality of statute. It's a question of why are we mentioning water supplies and just providing clarity. What I don't want to have happen, Mr. Chair, is for Skip, or I also mentioned, see Hohokam Irrigation District is listed in here, as if there are supplies available for future use. If there are, that's great. If there aren't, then I have a concern about mentioning in a document intended to promote future growth. So it's not intended, I'm very familiar with that. The intent is to provide clarity. So maybe to follow up on that, the GSF permit that the city of Coolidge has that is storing effluent, where are those effluent credits going? Are they annually recovered? Are they swapped out? So for example, the groundwater that Arizona Water Company provides that I'm presuming is in GRD, those credits are offsetting that obligation?
We're banking those credits. We're not applying them anywhere, but they're going to be available for future, my understanding. And I'm sorry Rick's not here, but what we're doing is acquiring credits for the offset of pumping. So the farmers are actually, and you know this, I mean, you do this up there, but for the public's knowledge, the farmers that we're delivering the effluent to are taking their pumps offline and documenting how much water is being saved from being pumped. And those credits the city is acquiring. We haven't sold them or assigned them to anybody at this point. So they're being banked.
Mr. Chair, Mr. Lopez, very familiar with that. And maybe that's a question that needs to be asked if we're asking for clarity of public. My understanding, and I could be wrong, is CAP water, no problem. Effluent water, I still am under the understanding that there is an annual storage and recovery component. You can't turn those into long-term credits. If you guys got it changed recently or passed, that's great, because it would open things up. But hey, Terry, how are you?
I'm fine. How are you doing?
Doing well.
Good, good. My name's Terry Sue Rossi. I'm the Vice President of Water Resources for Arizona Water Company. And actually, as a private water company, we are allowed to accrue long-term storage credits that are based on effluent, but we do not in this particular case because the effluent belongs to the city and they are accruing long-term storage credits. They've not decided what they would like to do with that water in the future. It could be support growth. It could be used to offset existing pumping. No decision has been made at this time. One of the reasons why I think surface water is on the list here is because there are urban irrigation customers within the SKID that provide water directly to city customers or to homeowners and residences and businesses here. So the intent here is not to say this is a future water supply, both a looking back and a looking forward. So I think that's why that particular one is on there. We have had no discussions with Carlos or, in fact, with any organization that has a CAP entitlement in terms of securing leases and that kind of thing. That's not something that we have pursued to date. And so the purpose of this section is really, I think we're still in the looking back section. So the purpose of this section is just to really describe, these are the water resources that are available within the city. There's surface water used for irrigation, and then there is also surface water used for non-irrigation purposes. But Arizona Water Company does not provide that supply, just like we don't provide the effluent.
Mr. Chair, for clarity, Ms. Rossi and I go back a ways. It would be helpful then if you would be so inclined to explain, and if you want to save it for later, that's fine, the annual storage and recovery obligation that can apply sometimes to effluent water, for the benefit of folks, because I can sometimes get a little direct on that, but there are times where that occurs. I just want to make sure everybody understands that the supplies we're talking about, the credits we're talking about, are there for longer than a year.
Yes, and we can certainly make sure that that's made clear in the doc. Absolutely do that.
That would be fantastic. Thank you, ma'am.
You're welcome.
Thank you. So we can move on to the next slide, please, unless there are any other questions.
No, please continue.
Great. Okay, so in the 2025 plan, we discussed in that look forward, adding more wells to the planning area. And we see in this particular slide here that we did in fact add another well, which is Cross Creek well number 42. It came online just this year, 2023. In 2013, all of the wells together produced 7.7 million gallons per day. And in 2022, the production maximum is now 10.4 million gallons per day in the planning area. I can go to the next. When the 2025 plan was published, Arizona Water Company began actively storing and we have water storage agreements with irrigation districts in Pinal Valley, including Maricopa Stanfield District, Hohokam Irrigation and Drainage District, and Central Arizona Irrigation and Drainage. In addition to storage with our groundwater savings facility partners, Arizona Water Company has the first phase of our located off the CAP Canal north of the Coolidge Airport. In 2022, approximately 700 acre-feet of water was stored at the facility, and more phases are being planned. With the addition of water storage agreements and our own underground storage facility, Arizona Water has been able to store and recover its CAP water. In this slide, you'll see the CAP Canal, the pipeline to the recharge basins, and the recharge basins as they stand today. Just to the north are the planned basins that are being worked on now. Just to the west, that is the Pima Lateral that belongs to San Carlos Irrigation and Drainage District. And again, for the public and commissioners, so Arizona Water Company participates in annual storage and recovery of its CAP water. And what that means is we take delivery of the water both at our recharge project and with our agricultural partners. Once that CAP water is in the ground, then we have the authority to pump the water up out of the ground again as CAP water and deliver it to our customers within the service area. We do that annually. We don't accrue long-term storage credits on that CAP water. It's just a cycle, an annual supply cycle.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Worthington, backing up on that, a couple of questions.
Sure.
How long is the USF permitted for? What's the permit renewal date?
It will be, I believe it is 2039.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
And with regards to in 2022, the 700 acre feet, is that net application or is that the water that was applied?
That was the water that was applied.
Okay.
This year, we have just shut down the basin, and we were able to divert a little over 800 acre feet. And next year, we're planning for 1,200 acre feet in the recharge basins themselves. And then the balance of the CAP water will be delivered to our agricultural partners.
Fantastic. Mr. Chair, what's the net application versus credit? What's the department, I should say it lightly, what's the department's cut for the application of water versus what you're entering?
Commissioner Leonard, that is a 5% cut to the aquifer.
Okay, so they didn't ding, okay, good deal. Thank you very much, Mr. Chair. Ms. Worthington.
Sure.
Thank you. Please.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chairman. Okay, now I need to, okay. Okay, so now we're getting into some data and some charts. In this slide, we see the growth in service connections in the Arizona Water Company service area in particular. We grew from about 5,000 connections in 2013 to 8,000 in 2022. What we see here, so the service connections is the line in orange, and the volume demand in acre feet is shown in blue. So production volume during the 2025 planning period actually remained relatively. In 2013, production volume was 2,823 acre feet, or 2,823 acre feet. And in 2022, it rose to 3,055 acre. So production from wells located in the planning area increased by a total of 8.2% across the 10-year planning. So what that equals is about a 1% increase year over year. And this look back will help to inform the projections that we're going to talk about a little bit later on. So in general, high growth in terms of connections, relatively flat in terms of production. Next slide, please. So to round out our look back, in 2021, Arizona Water Company partnered with the City of Coolidge and the Coolidge Chamber of Commerce to develop and launch the Coolidge Every Drop Counts for a Stronger Tomorrow. The program has resulted in 10 different videos. The videos highlighting the city's new groundwater savings facility have garnered several thousand views. Every Drop Counts for a Stronger Tomorrow campaign, along with an integrated demand management program, is another unique public-private partnership that coordinates water conservation by the city through ordinances, Arizona Water Company through system efficiencies, and the public through individual water reduction efforts at home and at work. So this is the logo for Every Drop Counts. And we're really excited to be a part of this for the city of Coolidge. Next. So we've taken a little bit of a look back, and now we will review some of the projections and look forward to 2035. So we'll look at community growth, projected water connections and demand, drought and shortage, integrated demand management program, and planned water supplies and infrastructure. Thank you. So based on the information that we gathered from the Central Arizona Association of Governments, is expected to grow about 5% year over year over the next 10-year planning period. A 5% growth pattern year over year projects a population of approximately 36,000 people by 2035. In terms of water service connections, we expect that there will be approximately 13,000 total connections in the Arizona Water Company service. Next slide. In 2022, there are 2.35 people per household, and the number of people is expected to rise during the planning period to 2.6 per household in 2035. Again, this data was derived from the Central Arizona Association of Governments, and they're expecting that families will continue to grow in the area, and people per household will also rise. So the development and growth in the planning area have been held at 5% in the previous section based on the historic growth and projections. The production volumes, as were witnessed in the 10-year look section, didn't grow at the same rate as the overall connections in the planning. This increase in production demand was about 1% per year, like we discussed previously. Using the projections provided by CAG for service connection growth at 5% and Arizona Water Company's historic production information, projected growth at 1% each year, the chart shows the total projected service connection and demand increases from 2023 to 2035. So you'll see on one side, we've got service connections, and on the opposite side, we've got volume demand in acre feet. The rise in connections is relatively steep, 5% per year, whereas projected total volume demand stays more modest at 1% year over year.
Could we go back one slide? I think I caught, yeah. The last column, well, the whole line. Population on the sheet here, the last set of numbers is 36,237. There it's 13,688.
Correct. Commissioner Metcalf, the unit of measure here is residential units, not population.
Oh, on that one.
Correct.
Okay,
Right.
because
So we've got-
I can't
yes.
read what it says over on your end.
I apologize, sir.
No, I just noticed that, hey, these numbers don't match.
They don't match. That's true. Residential units are the 13,688.
Okay,
And then,
gotcha.
okay,
Just thought I'd check that.
of course. Thank you. Okay.
Okay.
So, thank you.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Worthington,
Yes.
to that slide.
Correct.
You've mentioned a couple of times 5% growth with a modest increase in the demand for water.
Yes.
Can you help me understand a little more the theory behind that? What's your usage patterns? That's an incredibly modest increase related to demand. So I'm curious what the inputs from Arizona Water Company are for that, please.
Sure, of course. Commissioner Leonard and Chairman. So what we did when we took the look back, we saw what actually happened over the. So while the increase in connections rose quite a bit, the overall production volume stayed relatively flat at only 1% year over year. So we applied that same methodology in part because in the past 10 years, the connection growth was also coincidentally about 5%. So we applied the same methodology on this slide for the future. So CAG is saying to us, we anticipate that there will be a 5% increase in people and service connections. And we were able to apply the same logic to the projected total volume based on historic patterns. We understand that this is a projection, and there is the possibility that with this growth, the more homes that come online and the more people who live in the area, the percentage could also rise more than 1%, but we feel relatively comfortable looking backward in time to see what actually happened to project forward 1% on production.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Worthington, thank you for that. My next question, and feel free to say we need to look into it, because it's been a little bit of a hot potato question here, is what, if any, of that projected demand incorporates this new fun fad of half sections of ground going into rentals that would or wouldn't necessarily apply? It's okay to say you'd like to defer.
You
Tell me.
have 1 meter and 400 units sitting out there.
That is true. So in the document itself, we take a look a little bit about future growth in terms of connections, how many certificates of assured water supply are out there. I'll have to take another look at what that really looks like, keeping in mind that the Coolidge planning area and the Pinal Valley system are interconnected. So while the demand here is only focused on well production inside the planning area, there are other wells all the way around that we can also supplement. So if we find that the growth is exceeding the 1%, we are fully capable of being able to deliver water from outside of the planning area back into it. So, but I will definitely take a look at the rent-to-own situation.
Appreciate that. Mr. Chair, Ms. Worthington, I am saying that correctly. Whittington, my apologies.
okay.
I have dealt with a lot of folks today. Ms. Whittington, my sincere apologies.
No problem.
With regards then to, we've mentioned groundwater supplies and looking at and my apologies again, if this is going to be in the future, what you're going to get talked to. When you're looking at future growth, are you able to determine how much of that future growth would be contained within a groundwater replenishment obligation versus your credits? And what does that mean relative to your future demands and future growth capability?
Chairman Helby, Commissioner Leonard, we did take a look. I'm responsible for reporting all of the CAGRD use on an annual basis. So at this moment in time, there are approximately 20,000 parcels that are unbuilt that have the potential to need water in the future. At this particular time, particularly in the Coolidge planning area, the replenishment obligation is low. I believe when we did the projections and the math, I think it's in the document itself, and I apologize that I don't have it right off the top of my head. I believe we were somewhere at 140 years before we would be at a point where we would be 100% responsible for replenishment. So I can take a closer look and get back to you on that.
Mr. Chair, Ms. Whittington, I promise I will get that correct from now on. I appreciate the response. Mr. Chair, just to clarify, the reason why, at least from my perspective, that's very, very important is the community, this body, the council, all the staff have been very, very cognizant of the need for, I'll use the term because I don't have one else in my brain, affordable housing. What Arizona Water Company, and please correct me if I'm misinterpreting, is saying that in a lot of other communities, the way they're providing for growth is, and I say simply, enrolling their lands within the groundwater replenishment district, which at the end means those water users end up with, I won't call it a surprise bill, but a little bit of a surprise bill, because it go up until the year after. And then we can start talking about, what that means. In general terms, Mr. Chair, and for staff, I think it might be a little helpful if we could include in the upcoming document a description of what the GRD is and what Arizona Water Company, the other water companies, and Coolidge are doing to try and make certain that they're limiting that. Because GRD water is going to get pretty expensive as time goes on, particularly in the shortage.
Right.
So it doesn't mean a lot necessarily right now, and I am very pleased, thank you, that you've got that kind of projection, but it's an important distinction between what I think is growth, responsible growth versus we're just going to say we're going to enroll it into another taxing authority and go on, which is really a cue for Ms. Rossi to get up and say hello.
He's the boss.
So I just wanted to add to the discussion that in the Pinal AMA, In fact, the last certificate of assured water supply issued in the Pinal AMA was in like July of 2011. And the vast majority of our certificates of assured water, particular in Coolidge, were all issued prior to 2007. And as you know, Shane, there was a very, very generous groundwater allowance. And so fortunately, many of the subdivisions in Coolidge will never actually have to replenish unless the actual law is changed, or if there was a decision to become designated. And I understand that there's a lot of energy around becoming designated, but one of the things caution folks is that if we'd make a decision to become designated, we are walking away from a groundwater allowance that would, if taken away, would do exactly what you're talking about, increase the cost dramatically of the people that live here, not through, well, actually, if we designated, it would start coming through the actual water bill. So in thinking about becoming designated, we have to really weigh what we would be giving up in that process. And there is a very generous groundwater allowance that I personally would be very hesitant to walk away from because of exactly what you're talking about.
Mr. Chair, thank you for that, Terry. It's tough to encapsulate it. Maybe I'll do it this way. That little snippet is an incredible amount of planning, an incredible amount of historical assurances that whatever the city might be doing moving on, we need to make sure that we're coordinating with all of the water providers. We're not talking a couple of hundreds of dollars, we're talking thousands of dollars. So, and it doesn't show up until after the fact. So with that, I strongly encourage that continued partnership specifically related to the replenishment district and obligations and these pre-2011 issues. So thank you very much for that.
And I just add one more thing is that we have been working on something called the Pinal Water Hub, where we are doing a very detailed analysis of every single certificate, not just within Arizona Water, adding partners. And so anybody who has a certificate of assured water supply will be added to the hub. And the purpose of that is to keep track of exactly how many subdivisions we have, how many are subject to replenishment, how many vacant lots are there, how many are built, and the demand, the projected demand of each subdivision. And so,
Thank you, Ms. Rossi. Ms. Worthington,
Chairman, are you ready to move on?
please.
Okay. I did want to mention on the previous slide, I apologize. I wanted to mention for its part, Global Water also expects significant growth over the next 10 years, and Mr. Fleming will also be able to speak to his system specifically. But since their focus is on the industrial and commercial development, they believe that it's too early to predict the kinds of demands that will be placed on its service area. However, based on the projects they're working on today, there is an expected demand of 1.5 million gallons per day in the short term and approximately 1 million gallons per day to be available for recharge and reuse moving forward. So since we live in Arizona, we need to acknowledge that drought and water shortages whenever we discuss future plans. When we talk about the good news of growth in our communities, we need also to discuss the reality of living in the desert. In the 2035 plan, we discuss the facts as we know them today. Since Arizona Water Company delivers CAP water to the Coolidge planning area, we are engaged with the United States process for developing the post-2026 Colorado River operating guidelines. We know that the current guidelines will expire at the end of 2026, and new guidelines will be in the 2027. Arizona Water Company, along with other CAP users, are participating in the Arizona reconsultation regarding the new guidelines. We can move on. The integrated demand management, I'm sorry, we can go to the next slide. Thanks. Integrated demand management program will continue to build out in new and more robust best management practices that are required with the Department of Water Resources Fifth Management Plan. The new requirements go into effect January 2025. From the fourth grade water festival to regional water conservation campaign, excited and ready to expand our integrated demand management program with community support from the city of Coolidge. So this is a picture of this year's fourth grade water festival. So we see I want to say that's the mayor and our water conservation coordinator teaching all about water conservation. Next slide. So the last slide of this evening is aimed at discussing planned water supplies and infrastructure. Some highlights of the 2035 plan and the water element discuss Arizona Water Company's participation in SRP's Bartlett Dam feasibility study. If the project is approved and built, we anticipate having a second renewable water supply at the end of the planning period. The city has the potential to expand its wastewater facility to accommodate new planned growth during the planning period. Arizona Water Company intends to expand the capacity at its Pinal Valley Recharge and Recovery Project. And lastly, we intend to install and replace underground infrastructure and add more well capacity as needed. In conclusion, this presentation has highlighted the topics that are covered in our water resource element of the 2035 general plan, and I'm happy to answer any additional questions you may have. Thank you for your time. Vice Chair Metcalf, yes?
In my other life,
Yeah.
I worked with a group in Oracle, and we were working on water in that area up there, which is your area.
It is, that's true.
And underneath the Galero Mountains, right there on the other side of the San Pedro River, the hydrologist that we were working with said there is the largest pool of water storage in the state of Arizona under that mountain. You never hear that said because people don't want to talk about it, because they don't want anybody else to know about it, I think. You know about it now.
I do know about it
Your
now.
area.
It is our area, so
I
I'm going
know.
to go home and ask our hydrologist all about it.
Oh, yeah. And, you know, anything that's in your area can be moved from Oracle and Salmon Well and Mammoth down the river. There's already a way to get it to this area because it goes down the river to the Gila and down the river to the diversion dam, and we have millions of gallons, a million of acre feet of water underneath that mountain up there.
That's good to know. I'm going to go home and research that
I-
and see how I can make that happen.
Well, and if we need more water here because of a drought or something, and we have a way to get it, then we can get it.
Yeah. I think that's amazing. Thank you.
Okay?
I appreciate that.
I have a question.
Of course, Commissioner.
Do you know roughly how many domestic wells are in the Coolidge service area? And are they monitored in any way on how much water is being removed by those?
Gosh, I wish I had that answer at the top of my head. I'm looking at the map and I'm like, man, there's a lot of dots here. The way the rules are written today is if a well owner is utilizing their well for their personal use with a pump that pumps less than 35 gallons per minute, there is no requirement for them to report their use. So it has that particular provision. It's called an exempt well, right? It's for your parcel, your own animals. If it's small enough, the state at this time does not require a report on that. Larger ones, like production wells that Arizona Water Company has, like Global Water has, there are very stringent reporting requirements, and we do those on an annual basis.
I serve on a groundwater committee here in the Pinal AMA. And I was tasked to figure out roughly how many domestic wells are in the Pinal AMA.
Sure.
And I, I did some math, and if a domestic well ran 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it could pump like 56 acre feet.
That's true. Yep, I agree with that statement.
Yeah.
So with that being said, I know they're not regulated, but they are drawing on the aquifer, maybe on the water that you're recharging in there. Maybe it's coming up in their house.
It's possible. Yes.
Okay.
That's the way the rules are today.
Mr. Chair, to that point, one of the reasons why, as the groundwater code was adopted in 1980, exempt wells were created was simply to acknowledge the fact that there were going to be uses of groundwater and aquifers that, for example, reporting, asking the family to do it. And to your point, yeah, if every well was operating 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 5, what they would call a de minimis use starts adding up. It's the theory of rounding errors, right? One's not going to cause a problem. You put 2,000 into an aquifer, they start to have an impact. The department is, along with things that Arizona Water Company has mentioned through the reconsultation process, through the governor's water committee, and a lot of other things, taking a look at those types of withdrawals from what we're looking at relative to the Growing Smarter Plus laws that require the general plans. Those are all sort of in flux. The issue is, and probably what you have experienced, is at a de minimis level, or you start looking at exempt wells, there might be in the future a desire to restrict or remove, but then who's stepping up to supply it? The private water companies, designated providers, municipalities would probably be tasked, but then, as again, on your committee, you've probably heard this, you end up in a little bit of the Rio Verde foothills scenario. So it is being looked at, in particular, as you mentioned, in the San Pedro area, and a lawsuit that's ongoing related to subflow. So at what point do surface waters that are coming out of the sky, are they no longer surface waters, they become groundwater? And on the north side of the river, I'm not speaking on behalf of Arizona Water Company, there is beginning to be some contention to the point that you have acknowledged, and is worth re-mentioning, which is all of this water that has been stored in the aquifer, when folks start pulling it up, and in particular to the cities who have been storing it, are we pulling groundwater or are we pulling credits, right?
Right.
So stay tuned is probably the best, right? It gets pretty complicated pretty fast. With regards to then, Mr. Chair, if you don't mind, and again, I would absolutely give you the out or look over your shoulder and ask Terry to step back up. Do you want to add a few comments about the consultation process and maybe what happens if Arizona and its contract holders in Central Arizona aren't able to figure out a way to exist? I mean, what does that mean for your CAP water at this point, or is that already taken into account? Long story short, strict adherence to the law, or we come up with a way to operate with California and Nevada and others.
Commissioner Leonard, so as part of the Shared Interest Group, which is a subgroup of the Arizona Reconsultation Committee, our position has primarily been one to request that the negotiating team really take a look at the structural deficit, the difference between how much water is coming down the river versus how much is being delivered. So we were pretty pleased and had a meeting this morning that talked about your most recent ARC committee meeting, where a new proposal has been discussed to take into account that structural deficit before it ever even is diverted to Arizona, or the CAP, pardon me. For Arizona Water Company's part, we've been taking a really hard look at what would life look like if we experienced a substantial cut in our CAP allocation. In the short term, we've had assurances from the Arizona Water Banking Authority that long-term storage credits that had been stored in the past would be distributed to M&I subcontract holders so that we would be able to pump CAP credits from our wells and deliver those to our customers. Again, for the public and for the commissioners, since Arizona operates in a bit of a bifurcated system, there is a legal difference between groundwater and CAP water being pumped up out of the ground if it's been stored before. So when we talk about this process of annual storage and recovery, we're putting CAP water into the ground on an annual basis and we're pumping it back up in the legal sense of the word. In terms of the long-term storage credits, the Arizona Water Banking Authority over many decades and accruing the long-term storage credits. And that's where the legal definitions become kind of important. So if they distribute these credits to M&I subcontract holders that have been cut, then we would be pumping and delivering CAP water to our customers in a legal sense of the word. And here comes my boss. Hope it didn't.
So, Shane, I just want to make sure I understand what you're maybe suggesting. Are you suggesting that the element should contain some language that talks about the potential impact of shortage on entitlements and perhaps how we would address those impacts?
Mr. Chair, Terry, yes, but understanding the sensitivity of that language. Certainly from Arizona Water Company's perspective, all of the contract holders. That's a very difficult thing to plan. But what I might suggest is highlighting the efforts that the water companies have undertaken to bolster in the face of, for example, what came down, well, it's been coming down for a while, but was made public at the last ARC meeting. I think that would be helpful because it provides some assurances, not just for your customers, but for the city and the planning area. One of the things, and when as a side note, I'm saying all this now, so at the end, staff can just say, are there any comments? But no, we took care of them all. I think we have focused a lot on a state level and a national level on all of the bad. We forget that there is good work that has gone on, the 1980 groundwater code, the water banking authority, the storage statutes, all of the things that have been done to attempt to remedy. We're prepared for it. So maybe what I would ask to staff and to the water companies is highlight that as well as what you're doing to plan for future growth. Because maybe I'm in the minority here. I still don't believe and I'm saying this for me, Commissioner Leonard, not on behalf of the city. We are still suffering bad press for the governor's speech at the beginning of the year. And I think these are opportunities as we go and the communities do this to say, hold on, things like we're doing balancing. We got 140 years. I'm not putting words in your mouth, but those things would be beneficial.
I stand behind 100 years for sure, because I wrote it in here, and so that must mean it's true.
So, Mr. Chair, members of the staff and the public, thank you for humoring me in this, but yeah, Terry, for that. Providing some narrative so that 5 years from now, 10 years from now, when you're January 1, 2027, and we're dealing with that reality, you know what we've done.
Yeah, and I agree with what you're saying, that we are not very good at promoting all the good things that we have done in the state for decades. I mean, you and I have been in this business a long time now, and I think that we as a state and as communities could do a lot better job of promoting all the good things that we've done. And I think we can absolutely add a section to the element that talks about the water bank in particular. And when you look at what the water bank has done down in the Pinal AMA, the water bank has provided more protection, or what I would call insurance, in the Pinal AMA than it has in the Phoenix or the Tucson AMA. And that's a very positive story that I think we can easily.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chairman, we also have Ron Fleming with the Global Water Company to talk about inland Port Arizona as well.
Good evening, Chairman, Commissioners. Ron Fleming with Global Water. Appreciate the opportunity to be here with you tonight and having the opportunity to comment on the plan or the water element portion. So we did, to be clear, provide input on that water element that was provided by Arizona Water Company. So I'm only here today to really use one slide to just give a quick update as it pertains to the new utility that we are planning, permitting, and constructing for the inland port Arizona and answer any questions. So the one slide here is just an overview of our master plan that we've put together for the inland port. As mentioned, we are currently serving Nikola. We have a temporary well that's providing some backup water for fire suppression reasons, and then we have a permanent domestic well where we converted an agricultural well that's going to serve the facility through a local water distribution center. But that was constructed that way because of the timeline with which Nikola wanted to build. What we're really working on is an appropriate regional master plan for the integration of water, wastewater, and recycled water. That's represented on here. We have a property that's approximately 40 acres, shown in the red hatch mark there, where we will have a combined water reclamation facility and water treatment facility. And then you can see the lines on the map that just kind of show how we're going to interconnect all the lots and ultimately all of the projects, including Procter & Gamble, who we believe project to move forward there. The only thing I'll draw your attention to is the purple pipe element of what's shown on that map. So Arizona Water Company talked a lot about the demand side management piece, which is the conservation of the potable and raw water as part of their service. Our term that we utilize, because we also do wastewater and recycled water, is called total water management. And what we're doing there is we're trying to maximize the direct beneficial reuse of reclaimed water or effluent, we like the term recycled water, to the fullest extent possible so that you are reducing how much groundwater you need to pump out of the ground to begin with. We are having lots of conversations with the potential clients for IPAS on how we would best do this in a major industrial zone like this. But you can think of everything from just taking care of the outside irrigation demand to reuse inside of their applications, either for just of their facility and or actually in their production process. Ultimately, we're not there yet, but as maybe some of you know, the state's moving pretty quickly, and some of the big providers in the state are moving quickly to potable reuse. So the good news is, at least the ones we've worked with to date have an understanding that they are building an industrial manufacturing facility in the desert, and they're going to be part of this regional integrated plan whereby we collectively try to conserve water and utilize it in the best way possible. P&G's been fantastic on that, and I'm sure there'll be more we can discuss about that in the future when it's more public. But I think they're really going to set the bar high, and for everybody else that locates here. So again, we're new to the community. It's been 4 or 5 years since we signed the license agreement and the contracts on this property, but it's really just getting going. Nothing like the long storied history of the Arizona Water Company here. So our information today is a bit still early and limited, but we are committed to come back as often as we need to. We work with your staff very closely and really on from what projects will be located and how we intend to serve. We include them in those conversations, and as this comes together more, we're happy to come back to present again to the City Council. But with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just for clarity for the map. So purple, and I go back long enough to tell you that it's Pantone 512 because we had to spend a day and a half on that on the general permit rules. Terry might remember that. It's amazing what people will fight over. Green indicates,
That's the wastewater collection system.
just want to make sure, so blue would be the potable supply.
Blue is potable, and there's an off blue there,
Yep.
which is the raw water. So that's taking the water from the wells. I mentioned earlier there's 3 wells that we're looking to convert. They're indicated there near the center of the map. So we'll bring that raw water back to our centralized campus as well as ultimately connect in the Nikola well, and then just treat it and distribute it back out to the customers.
Mr. Chair, are those pre-code wells?
Excuse me?
Pre-code or post-code?
So those are existing agriculture. We will be converting them to a domestic well. Obviously, at this point, we are not providing any customers that will be under the Assured Water Supply Program.
Yeah. Well, I should ask it this way, maybe that's too in the weeds. So do the wells have pre-1980 groundwater code rights, or are they post-1980, which is another way of asking is, if and when you transition them, are they going to have pump limits placed on them?
They do not have pump limits placed on them.
Okay. And then those would feed, Mr. Chair, into what I would affectionately call the Avenue plant of Pinal County. Is that kind of where we're focusing?
I got
Or
the
am I
re-
not
I
supposed
got
to
the
mention
reference
that?
as well. So
It's because she likes it. That's why she did it.
yeah, so we're going to build. I'm sure you're referring to our water reclamation facility.
Yes, Mr. Chair. From your presentation, it would appear that that 40-acre site is intended to, in some way, shape, or form, pattern lightly with expanded capabilities on in Maricopa County with the 91st Avenue plant. Regional players into a regional program that then sends that water back out to a varied amount of uses. Is that an accurate statement?
Regional, meaning regional for this area, but certainly not on that scale.
Okay.
So you understand. But we, so the location that's indicated here was actually a location selected long ago when we did what's called a 208 permit with CAG. And so in our 208 permit, we've specified, I believe, an 11 million gallon per day water reclamation facility at this location. Obviously, that's quite significant for what's there today. That's the long-term plan. And then ultimately, there's other locations specified, and I know you guys have been working on your own 208 amendment, so you're familiar with that.
I appreciate that. That's again, long-winded comment and long questioning to one of the other recommendations, Mr. Chair, I'd like to request for both staff and then our partners is that these types of what I call seed projects really open up the conversation for countywide discussion relative to, for example, what you're doing on the Pinal County group, looking at groundwater and groundwater supplies. If we've got this what can be very intense water use, and they're willing to step up and talk about an 11 MGD program, then maybe that's the impetus that gets the rest of the county together to look at the regional plan for a much greater project. For clarification, the 91st Avenue plant in the Phoenix metro area, if you're not familiar, is a grand collection plant that takes in a lot of influent, treats it, and then sends it out to a lot of regional partners, including Palo Verde Nuclear Station. For clarity, I'm not suggesting that there is a nuclear power plant being proposed in the area in Pinal County. I want to make sure that's clear. But it's a measure of what can be done if the communities get together. The reason I have to clarify that is I brought that up a couple of months ago as an idea, and then some called me from a reporter and said, there's a nuclear power plant going in? Like,
No.
no. Maybe it should, but in any event, I appreciate that. And truly setting a mark now that we're publicly talking about it, because it's not always been easy. Direct potable reuse is a substantially kinder term than what it used to be called. And I think it's just one of the things that we're going to have to get used to. So thank you very
I
much.
correct myself. As of a few weeks ago, the state's official water purification.
Yeah, well.
That's what we're going with, is even 2 times better than what it used to be referred.
From Hill Delegation in the city of Phoenix. It's just a function of the reality of that's what's going to happen. Yeah, if you haven't heard, folks, get an expert like Terry or one of these folks to explain occurring in the Colorado River, and then you won't be as upset about it. So with that, thank you very much, sir, Mr. Chair. Thank you again for your patience.
And thank you, Commissioner. I appreciate that line of thinking. I like it. I just, the only thing I want to comment on is I think we can actually do it better than the 91st plant because those plans were put together long ago, and there's now a better way to even do that.
Sure.
Thank you all. Appreciate it very much.
Thank you.
Oh, excuse me.
Wrap it up, Phil?
Yep, I think we're good.
Before you wrap it up, I'd just like to say that it's great that we got people working with us and willing to take and combine ideas, and, you know, that's what pushes ahead when people are working together instead of, this is my job over here, I'm not going to mess with that over there, that's out of my league. Nah, we're all in one league. And this is the way we make that league take a giant leap. Because we can set the trend for the rest of the state if we work together. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, sir. Any more discussion? Phil? Direct?
Unless you have other questions of us or any,
No?
then I think we're good with that one.
All righty. We'll continue with new business. Next item on the agenda is actually my son's property. So for that reason, I will recuse myself and let these gentlemen handle business.
I'm sorry, Mr. Chairman, actually, we did have one thing to finish on that item because it was advertised for
Okay.
input. So we need to do a call to the public if there's anybody else that wants to ask questions or comment
Perfect.
on it.
We'll do that.
My apologies.
I'm sorry. All right. So with that, thanks for the intro. This is a call to the public. Anybody from the public would like to come up and discuss any aspect of what we just heard as far as our assured water and or our water supplies, please come to the podium. No?
Nobody's coming.
Okay, no takers. All right, now we'll close the public hearing. And we'll continue with business. And again, I'll recuse myself. Thank you. $23,1040.
Yeah, getting things ready here. Okay. Next order of business is Cool PZ 231040, a conditional use permit application request by Nathan Halby for a manufactured home in the agricultural zoning district as situated approximately 2,000 feet plus or minus south of the southeast corner of the intersection of East Coolidge Avenue and South Attaway Road, located at 1119 South Attaway Road, Coolidge, Arizona. APN number 202-34-05A. Bill?
And everything else has been taken care of? Okay, all right. So just going over the aspects from the last time, but start from scratch. Here is a conditional use permit request for a manufactured home at 1119 South Attaway, as identified at the subject site here. Going through, Ken, can you hear us all? Okay, continuing. General plan exhibit in the orange there identifies it as rural ranch edge. You can see a little bit of rural south surrounded by urban neighborhood as its land use. And then our zoning exhibit here identifies the green area and pretty much everything around it, excuse me, as being agriculture, as all this part of Coolidge is. Just a couple of quick site photos here, kind of moving down Attaway. The upper left there, it's generally looking to the southeast from South Attaway Road. A little further south, just a direct on view from the property frontage and the tree line. And the bottom photo in the center here is just a kind of the same one here, just a little bit of zoom in so you can kind of see what it looks like from South Attaway Road there, looking to the east, or as I call it, afar. So some of the information we have in your packet, the record of survey, basically identifying what the property is like with the existing structure on the front, the back end of the property here, which can also be seen as represented in the aerial. This portion here is a enlarged area of it so that you can see the proposed location of the manufactured home with its access, utilities called out with the access road. As you can see, it continues on and connects back out to South Attaway.
Phil, if I may, I think the access is going to be from the angle on the corner because as far as I know, unless something changes, the access is from the corner of the property where it's going to be split, because I think that's where the agreement is to come into that property. So the road won't be won't be from that road. It'll have to come from the corner, from,
Down here?
it'll have to, see right there, it'll have to be from right there.
Oh, yeah.
So
right there.
the
Okay.
access comes here and then goes back. 'Cause-
Those are two separate parcels, Gilbert.
But from what I understand, it is, this is private, and the deed that gives access to this is from this property owner. It doesn't go beyond this corner. That's why we had that corner done, so you could access this property. It's the way the deeds are in the right, it's not a public right-of-way. So to show that access from there is incorrect. But they'll have access to the property. That's not an issue, it's just not right there.
Okay. And just a few other things. Here's an example of what a proposed structure might look like for the manufactured home. Typical elements are double wide, ground set, no older than 3 years old. And as you can see, it's a nice looking model with all kinds of different options from a manufacturer that has quite a few different options here and stuff. So a nice proposal. So I will go back to this particular exhibit and turn it back over to the vice chair, I guess in this case, and the applicant is available, or representatives of the applicant are here. Oh, okay. So we can answer any additional questions or discussion amongst the commission. So I turn it back over to you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Anybody on the board have any questions?
Mr. Vice Chair, just clarifying, access is understood and is present.
Yes. Yeah, the property has access. On the recommendations, what we're doing is we approve the land split, city, and it's recorded at the county. However, what we're requesting is that the actual legal land split take place prior to us issuing a permit. So what has to happen is there has to be a separate deed for that back property. The map that was recorded doesn't split the property. So that way there's a separate parcel number and everything for that back portion. And so that's one of the requirements that needs to take place, issuing a permit. It's just in recommendation. It shouldn't be an issue. We approved the land split already. It's just a matter of recording it. However they do it through a title company or whatever. It's done to take care of that.
Mr. Vice Chair and Gilbert, thank you for that. I just wanted to make certain that it was special condition number one. It wasn't anything else other than just clarifying that.
Let me see what's special. Let me see.
Or maybe in other
Okay.
words, we weren't asking the applicant to do other than what was already general and then the special conditions.
Right. Yeah, no, we've worked on this for quite a while to get it to this point where they can they have the access and they could put the unit anywhere in that area as long as they meet the setbacks. So that part's all been addressed. The only thing we're waiting for is for the legal land split of the property. So then it's a separate parcel front, because you can't have two dwellings on a property. So the front portion already has a house, so it has to be split off, which the plan's already in place for that. It just has to go through that legal process.
Ken, you got anything to say?
No, I don't. I'm gonna walk in the door just now.
Okay. We're waiting for you.
So, Mr. Vice Chair, the staff's recommendation is to approve the conditional use permit for the home and subject to those conditions that we have listed. There he is. Oh. And Mr. Vice Chair, there is a call to the public on this one, I believe.
Okay. Does anybody have anything in the audience that they'd like to say about this Cool PZ 231040? If so, please come to the microphone. Nobody here. Call to the public's closed. I'll accept a motion.
Mr. Vice Chair, I'll make a motion to approve Cool PZ 23-10-40 and Resolution 23-09.
Okay, and including the general and special conditions
Yes,
from staff.
correct.
Okay. Motion has been made. Do I have a second?
Second?
Second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. And the resolution,
Thank you.
right there.
Mr. Vice Chair, if I might just to clarify, unanimous and Chair Halby did not vote because he had recused himself.
Exactly.
Record to reflect that because it's being recorded, so they might see you up there, but you did not vote.
Thank you.
Okay. Chairman Helby,
We can continue?
we can continue.
All right. Next item on the agenda, Cool PZ 231042, a planned area development application request by William Gass of Civil Design Solutions on behalf of Mike Lafferty with Lafferty Development for the Coolidge 500 Apartments planned area project, a 20.7 gross acre site involving 414 unit multi-phased apartment project of studio, 1 and 2 bedroom apartments with a 3.0 gross acre neighborhood retail commercial site located 1/3 of a mile south of the southeast intersection of Hannah Road and Highway 87. Director Lopez.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is an exciting project because we've been working with Mr. Lafferty for quite a while on this and on workforce housing type product, because it's out there by iPads. And then the really cool thing, it's right across the street from all the private prisons that are in Eloy. So, there's a need for housing, and this is one step, and Phil will explain for the PAD. So we're looking at the PAD, so you won't see all the things you see in a site plan. So this is strictly the PAD, planned area development. Establish the densities and how many units it can have and all that, and Phil will explain it. So Phil, go ahead.
I'll go through the usual stuff, but I just wanted to call out, usually with the section where we call out there's been any inquiry or comment. When the report went out, there hadn't been, but we actually had an inquiry by a gentleman by the name of Jose, hopefully I'm not butchering this, Penalosa at 9844 East Blanche Drive in Scottsdale, Arizona. And I had a couple phone calls and an email exchange or two with him where I provided him a copy of the staff report and some of the information from the applicant and stuff. So he was still digesting and hadn't provided me any more comment, but just wanted to enter into the record that he had called and inquired about it. So
Thank
just
you.
to enter it to the record. All right, our site here, as you can see from our earlier discussion here, we're actually in an area of the inland part of Arizona. This site is located right there, as Gilbert was just alluding to as far as a workforce housing, so he's pretty much on the doorstep of IPAS. Our general plan exhibit here calls out the location as urban neighborhood. You can see the surrounding purple there, which is the industrial and manufacturing. Once again, the IPAS area here. And the zoning exhibit has a unique situation, being the I-2 for the site designation and then the surrounding area. But once again, as called out in the packet, as discussed with the city manager and legal counsel, that this PAD process is the dual form for not only the PAD, but also creating the zoning that is the PAD for it. And later on, we'll be having a major site plan that'll come with it. Oh, one other quick thing, the Coolidge 500 apartments, that's the reference of the yield that they were hoping to initially get, but obviously it's been read out into the record. It's 414 units, not 500, so just so you know that. A couple of quick site photos, as usual, just kind of sliding down the roadway. Up here in the upper left, you have a view from Highway 87, generally looking straight on to the east, moving a little further up the highway. This is just kind of looking back towards the mountains in the background there to the southeast, and just sliding down a little further and looking at it from the northeast side, pretty much very similar to what you see out there in this portion adjacent to the IPAS location. This is a portion of the material that was submitted by the applicant. What you see here is the 5 phases of the project. The first phase is identified in the light blue here, and you can see the access road coming off of Highway 87. The first one will be with 1 building and an initial centralized retention area with some basic amenities to start with. Now, the first building in the first phase will be just that 1 building, and each phase will go in sort of a clockwise manner, moving around until it's completed here. And each one of those following phases will each have 2 buildings. First phase, about 90 or 46, and then being 2 buildings each for the next 4 phases, 92 to give us a total of the 414. And just a little side note, it's in the report, but in the 5th phase, there's actually a highly designated amenity area here that will actually be part of it, not just the open space and some passive recreational opportunities there. As shown in the landscape plan here, just a well-distributed landscape plan. Once again, you can see some areas of some passive recreation, some turf, which will be the retention area, and then a representation of the different types of amenities that might be in the last phase there for this planned area development project. And here is some elevations that the applicant has shared with us. Applicant ownership is actually very, very experienced in doing a lot of projects like this throughout central Arizona, in Phoenix and Scottsdale and Glendale and different areas like that. So this project developer comes to us well experienced in these types of categories. So that's basically the summary of it. The engineer for the applicant is here this evening. And if the chair would engage his opportunity to answer questions, I now turn it back over to you.
Thank you, sir. I'll look at my constituents.
I apologize for being late, but I have a few questions.
Certainly.
Phil, first.
Welcome.
I'm going to ask Phil this question because the retention basin shows it is 1.12 acres of retention. We're talking about a 20-acre property. that it's only going to need 1 acre, what percentage of retention basin size do we need on a property that's 20 acres going to be draining it into this 1 acre spot? I have a property that has 4.3 acres, and we're doing something that is 350 by 100 feet wide. And I'm just trying to get in my mind how that relates to this. It would seem like we'd need either a larger retention basin or a deeper retention basin.
Yeah. There are other areas within the specific buildings for other open space type areas. The parking lot has some of the capacity that would be passing forward. This is kind of more of an engineering question, but the reason why I answer it like that is because the open space in its total and what's countable is a component of not just a central location there in the highly amenitized area, many, many other smaller areas intermersed amongst the buildings themselves as well, too.
But parking's not for retention.
No, I'm talking about the areas between the parking. I'm talking about when the surface area that's conveying into the central drainage area and stuff, there's like a flow capacity on top of it that actually counts as part of it. But I think our engineer could probably answer that better than I could, since he's the designer of the plan sets here.
Yes, Bill Gasquet with Civil Design Solutions. One other thing, Phil, that I'd like to mention is that commercial area does not flow into the central area. That retention for the commercial would be standalone. So technically, what you're looking at here is the 17.7 acres. That 3-acre commercial would be standalone.
So the 20 acres that you have here, only 17 is going to have buildings on it, is going to be for housing, is that correct?
That's correct.
And we're going to put 450 some units into 17 acres plus all the parking necessary.
414 units, yes.
414 units, okay. Because we had a project come through last month that was 450 in 31 acres. And that seemed to be tight. This seems to be significantly. How tall are these buildings going to be?
These are, I believe they're 3 stories.
3 stories.
And the parking that is portrayed on the site plan is actually over, it shows more than what the city code is. So we exceed the parking.
And Chairman Halby and Commissioner Bolin, all that will be looked at in the site plan area of this. This is a PAD only. So we're jumping ahead a little bit into the site plan area that's where the engineering and all the thing, the flow, that's why you'll see arrows showing the flow, the direction of the drainage. That's in the site plan, so that's, good question, but that's where we'll cover all the real specific
So
items.
what are we trying to approve at this time? Just the PAD?
Yes.
And
densities and-
the PAD will determine the size of the driveways or the space between the buildings? Is that part of the PAD or is that part of the site plan?
That's part
It's
of
part
the
of site plan. Yeah, because those are all the standards the city has for the site plan to determine.
All we're looking at is changing it from I-2
Right.
to,
The PAD that allows the densities that are being looked at, 414 units.
so what are we changing it to, Gilbert?
Yeah.
R
PAD.
what? What is that, R2?
Yeah, the PAD is actually zoning. So PAD itself is a zoning designation. When you establish this PAD, densities it has, that becomes a zoning document. So we don't take the PAD and then add like R2 or R3 or anything. It's a PAD. And then we go to the PAD documents to see what the densities are. And that's like we do with every other PAD. So the PAD allows trade-offs. The PAD allows density increases, and then also we have open space. And so you may have an increase in density in some areas and more open. That's normally how PADs are used, so.
PAD allows, a PAD will determine how much open space is going to be required in this particular scenario, or is that or is that something else that's coming out of site plan? Because I think I don't know, the PAD, shouldn't that tell me how much open space is going to be required? How much outdoor living area is required? Those articles, are those going to be part of the PAD or part of the site plan?
It's in the documents. It talks about the open space. The requirement's 15%. And so it's in the report. And, but you're right, it does have that. It's included.
This is like the preliminary plat version before we get to the major site plan, because as a lot of the proposed development out there doesn't have assured water certificates, as this location does, this is kind of one of the front-end processes that will later require the major site plan. Similarly, even though Hawk Hollow was part of a existing PAD, but that was a major PAD amendment that was approved by you guys and then the city council, or excuse me, by this commission, and they are in the process of working with us to submit a major site plan for the first portion of their project. So this is kind of similar, but a little bit different, so. Smaller, and allowed by the general plan. You can, what is it, 10 acres? Yeah, a PAD can be as small as a minimum of 10 acres. So it fits that criteria, which is why it's coming to you like this.
Mr. Chair, if I might, just to clarify what Gilbert and Phil are saying, in order to get the PAD, the deviations from the zoning code, when they come back for site plan, staff will look to make sure that they are not deviating any further from what they're requesting here. So, as Gilbert pointed out, PAD requirement is 15%. If they are saying they're going to be providing 20%, that will be the new requirement for staff and for P&Z at the site plan stage. If they're requesting deviations from parking or from height setbacks, that will be the new standard moving forward for the site plan review. So to the extent that they're requesting deviations from the standard code, those can be discussed tonight.
Those are what we're discussing now.
Correct.
So the standard is 15% for open spaces, is that correct? And that's what's on this proposal, it's going to be 15%? Or is it going to be less than 15%? Sir?
I don't believe we have not, we did not request a separate, I believe we're meeting code on that. I don't think we've requested anything different.
Commissioner Boland, maybe to help with this and staff, because I've looked for it, is there a document in the packet that explains, and maybe this gets ahead of myself. Let me ask this question first, Mr. Boland, if you don't, Commissioner.
Step up.
Why are we looking at a PAD as opposed to traditional zoning for this project?
This project originally started about 3 or 4 years ago. And at that particular time, it had to receive a specific designation relative to the land use categorization, primarily because of its industrial designation. That land use change then allowed it to take this next step, which the applicant is just doing after this point in time, probably because hopefully that P&G and maybe some other projects will be coming on soon, because once they start through the major site plan process with us outside of the PAD, it's going to take them still quite a bit of time to actually get all their engineered plans in place and grading and things of that nature. So in other words, it's going to take them quite a bit of time. But that's the history, and it's also called out in the report here as well, too, as far as the land use change from that point in time.
Mr. Chair, Phil, thank you for that. So then in this document, and I appreciate you affirming what I thought I understood, is there a table? Is there something that I missed, which very likely could have been, that shows what standard is versus what the applicant is proposing relative to, for example, setbacks, landscaping, all of that?
Under the open space provision, it identifies the 15% open space requirement to be set aside. Once again, there are aspects that are conveyed in this process, some that are more specifically done so in the major site plan process. It's called out to say we'll provide a percentage of open space similar to this amount as determined when the major site plan process is undertaken to inventory and summarize all those smaller tract areas within the project that is distributed amongst these buildings. And that makes a reference to some of the stuff that I was talking to a little bit earlier.
Mr. Chair, Phil, I appreciate that. Okay, so let's not use landscaping as an example. So I'm on page 6 of the staff report. And it's, for example, multifamily residential zone R4. You with me?
Mm-hmm.
So under table G, minimum setbacks from property line use. That table, is that based off of the traditional R4 zoning for multifamily, or is that for the PAD?
most PADs usually borrow from our zoning code. Sometimes they're more imaginative, kind of call out more specific criteria and stuff, but more often than not, they basically call out the criteria within those references to, like in this case, the R4 and the C3 district.
So to continue down this trend, and I would ask then the applicant, do you know if you're going to be requesting as a part of the PAD deviations from, for example, the rear yard setbacks, front yard setbacks, things like that?
I don't believe that we have requested a deviation of the setbacks. Because the buildings are going to have parking behind it, and they will be well set back from the property lines. The zoning code does have an accessory building portion in there that has a 5-foot setback from the rear and sides. You'll see in the PAD proposal that one of the things that Lafferty Development has proposed is if the demand is there, some of the parking that is up against the property lines, they could replace with garages. And that would be where the 5-foot setback for those garages would be. And that's particularly, in my mind, that's particularly good for that section right next to the railroad, right? To provide a little bit of a buffer from the apartments to the railroad.
Commissioner Bolin, Mr. Chair, just to follow up a little bit on that, then let's talk about if the ingress egress. One point of ingress egress, is that a PAD or a zoning condition? We have ultimately 414 units. Let's just say half of those. How many parking spots? My apologies. How many parking spots are we talking about? And they're following the recently debated and reinforced width, but how many spots are you planning for there? Just to make sure I'm reading it the same way you are.
I think it's, I don't have that in front of me, but I think was that in the 600 range? Do you have that in front of you, Phil?
Yeah, I'm looking for it.
It was
Yeah,
around
it's a pretty high
It
number.
was around 1.7 spaces per unit.
Okay, so, Mr. Chair, I like easy math. Let's cut that in half and say there's 300 cars that are coming in and out. 1 point of ingress egress. I have a little concern with that. Now, maybe what staff's going to say, you're going to say getting from the state, but I also see a commercial property that's been carved out that might serve as a secondary means of access. That's one of my concerns as Commissioner Bolin, I'm certain, and others might have questions, but what's the discussion about that?
Mr. Chair, Commissioner Leonard, as we develop the site plan, then that'll be taken in front of the fire department and the fire chief and Ben Navarro, our public works engineer. And if they feel, and ADOT too, so if that's wide enough and they feel they can get in and take care of this area with the one entrance, which we have others that have one entrance, then we'll bring it forward with that recommendation. Now, if they say, we believe we need 2 entrances, then the site plan will show that when it comes to, if it's a requirement. But this is strictly to approve the PD density that's shown. All the widths of the roadways, whether there's 1 or 2 entrances, that's going to be in the site plan portion that'll come before you. And you can say, well, and then if there's still 1 entrance, then you can ask, why did the fire department think that 1 entrance will work? Is it wider than normal so that there's no blockage and they can come in? And did ADOT only allow 1 entrance off of, because they control what comes off of 87? I mean, we give that information to Tucson office of ADOT to the engineers, and they work through them on access. But it also involves our fire department, and we plan to have a fire station out here in the near future. Well, a few years. Not near, I shouldn't say near future, but there is one planned. So.
Mr. Chair, Gilbert, I'm Phil. Before I start again, did you have something else? I thought you were getting ready to.
Oh, I was just going to say, another way to really look at this is that usually a PAD, whether it's large or small, is more of a conceptual, like bubble layout. because of the nature of this type of project, you're getting a much, much greater level of detail here that is informative, but it need not necessarily have to be part of the requirements. In other words, what you're seeing here is a lot of the function that will come through the major site plan process, and those very specific numbers that we're kind of talking about here will be addressed in that process. It's just that, once again, the nature of the project and the ability for the applicant to be able to sort of visualize and see what, they're going to work with and stuff for materials and buildings and things like that is assistive in this process. So you'll be seeing this a little bit like this through the major site plan with some updates, and now obviously the very specific numbers here, just as that it's the PAD process, and it's not always this specific. It's much more kind of general to meet those criteria. So but it's nice to have this.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, Phil, I appreciate that. Maybe it'll be a little easier for me to express it this way. Part of my concern with PADs is that it's requesting future deviations that we don't yet necessarily know about. And while I appreciate we talk about, for example, the fire department approving access, ingress, egress, I wasn't aware that the fire department sets policy on numbers. I understood that they set, for example, this is minimally what we need. And I happen to believe, as a commissioner, for however little time there is left, that if we're talking about a PAD that's talking about this kind of intense use, ingress egress is something that needs to be proposed. I get the fire department or the police department could say, yeah, we can live with it. But if you're trying to get 300 vehicles in and out through one entrance, it takes one oops, one spilled coffee. We already have contact from the neighbor to the southwest of this property who apparently has got some questions. And so I want to make sure I'm clear. I recognize that at a PAD level, there are some limitations in scoping. But these are questions that I think set up the viability of the project, particularly as it relates to the amount and what's going on. There's no doubt there's a need for it, but and depending upon when folks are trying to get in and out of here relative to shift change across the street, I mean, there's some pretty significant things that go on in this area. And I like what the applicant has said relative to trying to buffer for the railroad, but to not surprisingly share some of Commissioner Boland's concerns, these are some details that, from a PAD standpoint, I think this is where sometimes the process suffers. That's an opinion statement, not a statement of fact. So, thank you.
And Mr. Chair, Commissioners, it's not only fire department, they're consulted, but it's really public works because of the access, and they'll be involved heavily in that. Traffic council will ask for that information from the engineering firm and how there is opportunity to add another driveway if we need to. So to the north, because that property is owned also. So, I mean, there's still some, when I say to the north, it's that blank area there. So it's still, we're asking for a PAD approval on density, at 414, the units that can go here, and then we'll work through all our, we're in the process of updating some of the standards on our roadways through the city council at the 11th, this next meeting. We're adding things that we were missing, like chip seal for roadways in the rural area. We use the county, and then also really referring to MAG. So we'll refer to those. That's what we do in Public Works, just so you know. All right. So it's not that they get to make up, we do apply the rules that we have. The city adopted for that.
Mr. Chairman, what would be our normal density on a project like this based on the regular code that we'd follow? We're looking at 414 units or whatever it is in a 17-acre parcel, and it just seems like we are really crowding this in. And I understand it'll be great to have the apartments, I'm in favor of that, but I think we're trying to put too much in too small a space.
Commissioner Boland, Mr. Chair, the land use, which precedes the zoning in this proposal, with this type of mixed development, being residential and commercial, allows up to a density of 20 units per acre, which is what the 414 represents. Originally, the applicant had desired more, but we had to discuss with them and come up with a computation of the 414 based upon the project in compliance with the land use through the general plan. So this is how we get to the 414, because it is allowed.
Okay, so that's what you're using as that number 414 is because it allow 20? Where does the number 20 come from? What, I thought it was 18, but maybe I'm wrong. Where's the number 20?
It is 18 for multifamily by itself, but when it's a mixed project like this involving commercial, it allows up to 20. And where the comparison comes from is similar projects throughout parts of Pinal County, the other jurisdictions.
But I'm sorry, Phil, excuse me, Chairman. The commercial is a separate part of this project. It's not, is it part of the PAD we're approving? Is this commercial? Or
It is a part of that. It is called out as part of the commercial. That's why some of the commercial standards from that particular thing and called out through different portions of the PAD document. So it is technically a mixed-use component as a PAD.
Mr. Chair, staff, and this is probably the applicant. Following up on that, if it's a part of the PAD, am I missing the detail about what might be in the commercial then? Other than what's described in the packet, which I saw, all of the exhibits deal with the residential. I don't see anything about commercial.
It's called out in several different places, but it is a part of the total acreage of this project as the PAD. It just, we happen to have the most specific detail, which once again, doesn't have to necessarily be provided at this level. This is sort of like halfway towards the major site plan, but in this process to be able to envision what exactly is sought here.
Absolutely.
So for the time being, the commercial parcel is a portion of it as it's being processed, as approved, but that unto itself would probably be proposed and required a separate major site plan process unto itself outside of the multifamily component here.
Mr. Chair, staff, applicant, I will say it from this chair. It's a polite frustration that we're bringing the commercial piece into the PAD to get to the mixed use that allows for 2 more units an acre and all the detail that goes into residential and not necessarily, and I would ask the applicant, do you have an idea of what's going on in commercial? We're using it as part of the benefit for doing the PAD to give you extra density, which is what the city allows, but there's no detail on what's in the commercial. So do you have an idea of what you're proposing?
Are you asking about land uses or tenants or?
Sure. Yes, sir.
It's going to be as demand comes forward. I mean, I'm not sure that, that Laverty Development has talked to anybody about that because we're way early in the process. But they recognize that if you're going to have development out here in the middle of an industrial area with no other residential, you're going to need some type of thing, whether it's neighborhood shops or services, you could have a laundromat or something that serves this type of community. Otherwise people are traveling all the way back up to town or back into Eloy to do something.
Mr. Chair, thank you, applicant, thank you for that. I appreciate what you're saying, but then we're talking about local uses on a 3-acre site. So what reasonably could we expect might go into that is one of the questions that I would ask staff to be looking at, because what I don't want to believe is that we threw down 3 acres of commercial just to get extra density, and then maybe we'll deal with it later. I want to believe that that's there for use, and eventually it would. But if 5 years from now, 6 years from now, you get a request comes in, we just want to turn it into more, then what do we do then? So this is a lot of theory approach with the pad, which I appreciate, but we're using it as a crux to get extra density for a PAD. Got no idea what's going to go.
Well, Mr. Chair and Commissioner Leonard, under the general plan, see, if you have under urban neighborhood, which is what this is, if you're allowed up to, if you put in a mixed-use development and you have commercial development part of it, then you're allowed to go a little higher in dwelling units. That's part of the PAD. So it's like you're getting a benefit for approving or allowing or adding a commercial component to it, when we look at this, in urban neighborhood, you default to what kind of commercial uses are allowed. Goes all the Cs up, so they could do C2 uses, but more than likely it'll be, like convenience store and those type of things that that's the way we see it, that would benefit the residential, because you wouldn't stick something in there that wouldn't be appropriate for all the tenants in that location, I would think.
Mr. Chair.
Groceries, sodas,
Yeah.
So that's how we would look at it, staff.
Absolutely. I'll call it this, it's the player to be named later. We're doing a trade with a PAD as opposed to traditional zoning. And some of us are asking, well, what do we get at the end? Maybe my question, more pointed for staff, Mr. Chair, is this: based on the number of acres that are proposed with the commercial site, knowing what we know about the design requirements, does staff have an idea? I know what can be generally allowed up to C3, but what logistically could actually go in there?
When we go through the site plan process, we'll look at what they're proposing, these setbacks, and you said logistics, what'll fit. So, obviously, the footprint of the building, the use will dictate, like if they want to have a convenience store, it'll be guided by the distance between the buildings. That's part of the requirements for site development plan and the zoning code. And then also, so that'll establish our distances, and then, so we'll use that criteria to control and provide guidance for what can be there on that site.
And this information, the way it's conveyed here, this easily, by far and away, meets and beats the setbacks and the building separations by a mile. So, I mean, it's not even a question of that relative to its comparable district.
Are you speaking with regards to the residential component or the commercial component?
I'm speaking only to the buildings that are shown there, which is the residential component, yes.
Okay, understood and agreed. It's the player to be, here, put this into lexicon, it's the player to be named later. We are talking about a lot of things contingent and allowed now because it's a mixed use with commercial, but we don't really have a good idea what's going on with commercial. Talked about a potential secondary point of ingress. And make no mistake, I'm not any less excited about the idea of these types of projects coming in, but I'm concerned that sometimes the rigor with which we want to approve these doesn't provide for these kinds of questions coming up. Nothing against the applicant or the use, but we're taking a component of property that we don't really know what's going on and using it as a benefit to get extra through a PAD. And I've said it a few times, and I don't have to worry about saying it again, but that's part of what I've got going on up here.
Mr. Chairman, I have a question on this. So the total property is 20 acres, and we're carving out 3 acres for the commercial part. So that leaves 17 acres. If you divide the 17 into the 414 units, that comes out to 24 units per acre.
It's a gross number to the entire site because it's a mixed-use development, so you use the entire acreage relative to that.
Well, it seems kind of confusing there. Because it's not, the structures aren't going to be built on the commercial part.
And that's what we have to, we look at the general plan that we're updating now to give us guidance, and what it does, it tells us, if you do this, this is allowed. If you do this, this is allowed. So on page 28 of the general plan, that's where we go to see what, and it has, like, let me give you an example. It has another section that says development in sites greater than 160 up to 12%, 0.5% of the total gross development area for residential densities up to 16 acres. So it controls based on acreage and gives you different scenarios. And so this plan was approved by the voters. It went to the voters and we presented it to them, so it'll come back again next year, again for the voters, with some of the language same or changed, but this has worked for us for quite a while. We did a project like this, Phil just brought up the gin at Lamar Corner. Remember, it had different zoning densities, but we kind of knew what was there, that they were going to propose a store, but it wasn't in concrete yet, and so you'll get things like that when you do PADs. Plan area developments are different than hard zoning because they allow you to do increased densities in exchange for having a commercial use on the site. So that's probably the best way I can explain it. But we're recommending approval of this PAD from a staff perspective. And we did consult with Rick on this, and this is the way he thought we should go. Rick was the planning director before I had a lot of experience with this, so that's, I think, when we talked to him, right? That's what.
Yeah, I even double checked with him before we brought this before the commission and stuff, just to be sure that that's how he wanted to approach this, and he said he.
Mr. Chairman, so let me get this in my head straight. We normally would do 18 units on a regular zoning. We're doing 20 units, but we're counting 3 acres of land that we're not actually going to be building any living units on. So that gets us up to 24. So now we're from 18 to 24 in density for the area where the living units will be. But we can do that because we have a 3-acre pad that someday, someday that'll be commercial.
It's actually 20 units based upon the 20 units, which would be compliant and is compliant with the general plan, the sections that Gilbert was just reading out.
Right.
Based
In
on
the
how it's
total,
calculated,
yes.
right. Yeah, to say it's
As long as
24,
we include the commercial property, though.
yeah, and that's part of the general plan allows that.
But
So
again,
if you want to change the general plan, then I think you know, when we're going through this, you'll need to comment and say, I don't want that much. You know, I don't want to allow commercial to be in a PAD, but then you're limiting creativity on getting some products out that they'll have a commercial component and they're pretty cool.
The bonus is clearly called out in exchange for creating the commercial, because a lot of times you could have proposals that come in and all they want to do is nothing but multifamily. They don't want to provide other services, different land uses, different types of zoning, even if it be convenience, being like a dry cleaner or a combination of restaurant or something like that with a gas station and stuff. So it's actually the commercial component by adding it to it that actually truly makes a component and a planned area development, and the bonus is being awarded to the residential portion by creating the commercial, not the other way around.
And the commercial, actual building of the commercial will not be done until they find tenants willing to move into buildings that they will build at that time. Basically, is that correct?
Instead of just having one flat-out multifamily thing, because we get lots of inquiries, and they just want to make conversions, and they don't want to talk about providing other land uses and zoning for other services in proximity to those other proposed developments, however they're coming about. So this is actually a very good thing, and that's the way that this has been designed, to encourage or ask for that criteria for the benefit of the community.
And you see the way the development will go. The first blue area will go first, and then they'll start adding buildings. So as those develop, then we can look at, you know, it'll come out. So it'll probably be at the very end when they develop the commercial, because it's on the last phase of where it's at. So that's how it's going to. So it'll have enough density, enough use to justify whatever goes in that's supported by all those residents.
is there a mechanism in place that says much to what the other commissioners have said that precludes them from turning that commercial property 5 years, 10 years from now into more apartments?
They would have to come back and amend the PAD to do that. So they would have to come back to you and say, we want to take this commercial area now, build apartments here. You'd have to approve that. Because if you approve it the way it is, then it's got a commercial component. It can't be changed unless they come back to you. That's what the PAD does. It ties it down, if you like the design. You know, so.
Mr. Chair, Gilbert, I don't think this is going to be the case. If the commission suggested not moving forward with the PAD, what happens?
It wouldn't move, it would go forward to the council with a denial from the P&Z. They have the right to override you if they so choose.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I'm going to say this as lightly as I can, because I appreciate where you and staff are coming from. this is the city of Coolidge, not the city of Rick. And when we start talking about what individuals want versus what's in the best interest, I think, of the city, I get very concerned, and I have been concerned. I recognize what the PAD is offering here, but I'm also looking at it from the standpoint, we're carving out some pretty dense homes out of what is currently supposed to be industrial manufacturing. So what I would like to hear when it comes to these things, or maybe I should have made this request, is what's in the best interest of the city, not necessarily what an individual wants. I'm getting a little frustrated with that. The PAD exists to allow for give and take. I've expressed my concern about using commercial as the key that lets them get more dense, and I guess I'll leave it at that. The other questions I have related to the project itself are certainly more in tune with what the site plan would be, but we don't have that. There might be some other concerns with the building itself, but that's awful frustrating, fellas. As commissioner, I get tired of hearing that.
Mr. Chair, I apologize if I made it sound like Rick determined how this was. We just confer with him. We get into some pretty advanced planning issues because he has the knowledge. We do too. You know, I've been doing planning since the county, and we had PADs back in the 80s. And the city of Chandler, I was in planning and engineering. In the city of Glendale, did revitalization projects. So, I mean, this isn't a new tool. It's just how, what it does, it supports IPAS for workforce housing, which everybody's trying to get. So it's not I wouldn't look at it as, and this is only my professional opinion, is I wouldn't look at it as we're converting where P&G would go, because it's too small, to residential, where this residential is designed to support, the reason it's being proposed here is to support all those jobs that are going, and how far they have to drive before they go somewhere, and does everybody have a car? You know, they're gonna be manufacturing, P&G is gonna hire 500 people. Nicola's supposed to be at the build-out 2,700. So there's no housing around there, and the thing, when we get these new companies in, they look around and go, well, what's the housing for all my employees? And we tell them, well, we're working on this, and, we've got some down in the core of the city. We have a transit system that can get people back and forth. Things are gonna, improve. So that's where this came from. When he heard P&G was coming, that's when he came forward to try to propose housing to help with this area, so, and the prisons.
We knew that going in when we approved, changed the designation on all the land out there. And we talked about this eventuality coming of apartments and stores and laundries. And now, I got one more thing to say. If we don't bring it this way towards Coolidge, it's gonna go to Eloy. That's the bottom line. Now, we're either gonna get it here or they're gonna get it there. And that is not a statement that won't be proven in the future. So there we go.
Mr. Chairman, I have one more point that I'd like to bring up or ask a question for understanding. And it's on page 7, under phasing of development. So we know that there's going to be 5 phases, and they line out how many buildings are going to be built in each phase. And then the bottom 2 sentences, it says this project phases as outlined are subject to change during the development of the project as market conditions change and infrastructure improvements evolve. So I guess my question is, when you build phase 1, will you build all the parking lots and the common area and all of that? And then as the need arises for more units, you'll just add the other phases in? Or will phase 1 just sit there by itself if the economy changes?
Phase 1 includes the building and the parking around the building. And then also the retention area in that open space that would be used for the passive recreation. As each one of these goes online, it would build more of the parking associated with the buildings. The thought behind this is each phase, from what Lafferty Development has projected, each phase would be a year. Can't guarantee that, of course. It's going to be highly dependent on the workers that come online. I mean, if P&G pulls out, that kind of delays things a little. Or, you see what I'm saying? It's a give and take with the workers on demand on who moves in here. But his thought is the housing would also support construction workers who are building some of these new facilities in IPAS. Because, right now, everybody has to travel to the site. And you'd like to capture that and provide a way for people to actually stay closer to where they work and not have to commute.
I guess my concern is, we build phase one and then we go through a dip in the economy and they stop building or whatever the circumstances are. Then we just have one unit sitting out there. But, tumbleweeds piled up around it and things like that.
Sure. I understand the concern.
Any other discussion?
Mr. Chair, just for clarification that, so we would also, they do the half street improvements along or turn lanes, decel lanes on Arizona or on the State Highway 87 if ADOT requires that. So that would be part of this process. And just like our subdivisions, I mean, how many lots did we have? About 2,000 lots available, economy turned on housing. As soon as they came back, they started buying those up and building houses. So we had enough to keep them going. And I thought we had a 10-year supply and we ran out. We're running out. I mean, we don't have a lot. So nobody can predict the economy, obviously. And so it could be that this goes and then the second one's built in a year, but if things slow down, the second one may maybe take 2 years. Casablanca's going through that. We got the first phase done. They're renting things out. We're waiting for plans for the second portion of that over on Vacaine across the tracks. It's a real nice development. They're in the same thing. They built part of it, and then you got the added things right now of the supply chain, and nobody can control that. They're having a hard time getting products, and it's starting to get better. Cement's more available, things that, that's why Burger King, and Chick brings that up, but that's why it's lagging. It's because it's waiting to get things, and it's getting better, so they're thinking we're coming pretty quick. But it is, they're asking you to approve a PAD with a phased approach, and it only includes the blue area. Now, they might grade everything else. I've seen that. Like Casablanca, they graded the whole area because they have all the equipment out there and it's ready. When they're going to go forward, they just go in and finish up the grading and drainage. So you may see that. So depends on their approach for the engineering. Just to add added explanation to help.
And regarding the highway improvements, we have not had any discussions with DOT, but those will be built whenever they tell us they need to be. And that will also be dependent on the traffic study that they will be reviewing and approving. We fully anticipate that they would require a decel lane, and Mike has also proposed an acceleration lane for everybody turning north, and then also a left turn lane in.
ADOT will make those requirements, right?
Yes, Mr. Chair, even in the main core of the city, because 87, the boulevard is a state highway, they actually give us guidance on all the developments. And they try to work with us on some of the existing turn-ins, but they can actually say, we want this taken out. In this case, we're talking raw land, so they can request, based on traffic, decel lane, like we're doing with Hannah Road and all that for the industrial development.
Mr. Chairman, from what I understand, from what I'm hearing, the only way that this project can work on this property is with this PAD, because they can't do it under normal existing codes in the city of Coolidge to get the number of units per acre that they want to have on the property or the number of units. So a PAD is required for them to do this. So it is utilizing the code or the general plan to change the density to a higher level than would be normally acceptable because of it. Part of the general plan says if you combine the two, you can do that. I personally do not like PADs. We have several communities in Coolidge that have been built by PADs back in the early 2000s, before any of us were here, or at least working in this job. I was here. And the roads, we suffer those roads today. Fire trucks can't get through when there's cars parked on the streets. And we allowed that to happen. We gave that to the builders in order to get them to build there. That was the enticement, more houses per acre. Okay? I'm not in favor of this PAD.
And again, that's what the general plan guidance provides for us that was approved by the voters. So,
Yep.
you know, it's not something we're just pulling out of the air. It's
I'm one of the
voters approved
voters.
it. So, yeah.
All right. Any other discussion? This is a public hearing. We will open it to the public. Anybody from the public like to comment? No takers? Please come to the podium. Sir, please come to the podium. You're recorded, that's why.
You're on television.
And you're on television.
Be famous.
Just one question, will there be like electric chargers in there? You're gonna have like 400 apartments, so you're gonna have at least 500-600 vehicles in there, and probably a fifth of them by the time this is built are gonna be electric, so are there gonna be electric chargers or something in there? Because part of the residents will have electric cars by then, so I was just wondering about that, so just forethought.
Maybe the builder can answer that for us. Thank you.
I can tell you that I have not had any discussions with Lafferty Development about that, but knowing Mike like I do, I would be surprised if he did not have any, because serving workers at Nikola is one of his goals. Right? So, and I do know that specifically if he puts the accessory buildings in like he wants to do, those garages would have electric service to them. Now, as far as standalone charging units, I have not talked to him about this, so I can't tell you.
I don't know if like a private company would come in, so.
Yeah. And I would imagine, and I don't know if part of the site plan process, you know, where they would say you're required X number of spaces or something like that.
Our code doesn't require, Mr. Chair, code doesn't require that you add those, but we certainly would encourage it. Just have a certain percentage allowed, just because we know there are a lot more electric vehicles around, so. And a lot of times, I think APS and the utilities have programs to help you put, and maybe give you some credit for it.
So, Gilbert, the applicant made mention of garages. On our documents that we don't have garages. Is that something gonna be presented to us during the site plan?
Yes, there may be some garages on the outer edges, if you see the darker areas there.
It's a very,
So you can't see them very well, but see right there? Right there. Here. Yeah. It's the same, you know, we did that with, Casablanca has some parking garages along the perimeter. And so it's the same concept, which is you see them different places around the exterior, which that's good.
Oh, yeah, got it.
Yeah, there's a small error. I apologize for the
Yep.
size, but it does say that.
75, yeah, 150 a month.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to also just note that one of the other advantages of a PAD for us as a jurisdiction is the stipulations The stipulations are comprehensive with regard to engineering, building, things of that nature, working with like ADOT and things of that nature. And these are actually basically a cross-section of like looking at like 6, 7, 8 other PADs, some recent activities, some of the past. Very comprehensive. So aside of the major site plan processes that they would have to submit into and come back before this body, these other stipulations will ensure that it develops the way that it's supposed to in line with those prescribed requirements, or at least those standards and procedures. So
I am anxious to see what the fire chief and Mr. Navarro's recommendations are.
Sure. Yeah. Yes, Mr. Chair, they'll be included for sure in the design review process.
All right. Anybody else from the public? No takers? All right, at this time, we'll close the public hearing. And we'll entertain a motion. I don't hear a motion to approve.
Mr. Chair, maybe to break the awkward silence here, and just to get a motion on the table, I would move to deny Cool PZ 23-10-42.
I second that motion.
All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Probably going to want a roll call vote.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, if you could ask for, if there's any opposed to that motion.
Any opposed to that motion? No.
So it's unanimous? Everybody voted?
Unanimous, yes. All right, thank you, sir.
Thank you.
All right, next item on the agenda, or final item on the agenda. Cool PZ 220517, a preliminary plat application submitted by Chris Morgan of United Engineering Group on behalf of Kevin Tanner Peterson of Peterson Properties Management, per the Skousen Farms LLC. For Skousen Farms, Planned Area Development Units G through K, a 568 residential lot subdivision on a 134-acre parcel generally located at the northwest corner of Vaca Inn Road and North Skousen Road. Director Lopez.
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, this is a pre-plat application submitted for some property that is a PAD, and it meets the requirements. And so, Phil, go ahead.
basically, we'll use our same pieces of information here. This is the site exhibit showing the location of the subject site. You can see its relationship to Viking Inn and Skousen, the subsequent available nearby services between water and sewer lines there, green and the blue. Our general plan exhibit identifies it as urban neighborhood, as pretty much the entire surrounding area is. And our zoning exhibit here is a PAD. As you can see, most of the area in and around the subject site is planned area development. So just a few site photos. Up in the upper left here, we're looking generally north from the right-of-way of Viking Road. A little bit to the right there, obviously it's a different time of year, the crops are gone, but that's looking northeast also from Viking. And then pivoting about 90 degrees over to Skousen Road, that's the site looking generally west across its section there. So before we look at the preliminary plat itself, this is the basic way to call out what it was previously. as a part of the Skousen Farms original approved PAD and what it's being proposed as. The cross-section of the yellow here, which goes from parcels G through K, identify what their prior designation was. And we've got a couple of parcels here where one was a multifamily or a kind of a cluster development and a school site, and the original numbers that were proposed here. Now, what we have for this preliminary plat is, you can see in the comparable numbers, is 132, 154 exactly, 156 to 155, and then these two combined parcels, for the explanation that'll come shortly, at being 210, now at 128, because you're basically going from a cluster multifamily type product to single-family detached housing units here to arrive at our total proposal of 568 units in the 4853 width lot categories here. And so basically you can see the difference here is the number of units that was originally proposed of the PAD could have yielded a 1,284 unit total to what is being proposed now as 1,127. And once again, that's for the reasons that the multifamily is being converted into single family detached. The school site has been expressed by the school district as not being necessary. And we did actually double and triple check with them. So that's why that is happening like that. So that's basically the summary of what the nuts and bolts are. And, this is a lot of detailed information. You do have it in your packet here. But I'll just basically call out that that's our cover sheet that describes all the detail, like the cross sections for the roadways adjacent to it, interior. And basically each sheet calling out the linear design element, central components of open space, tot lots in a few locations, as proposed locations for those amenities in a couple different places within the project. And a similar aspect here, and just kind of roundabout with reference to flow of traffic there, and just kind of completing the view of the general plat, or excuse me, yeah, the preliminary plat and another tot lot there, as you can see. And just some of the adjacent nearby surrounding areas. So I will come back to the cover page just as a reference for discussion. The applicant is here, or the applicant's representative, so he can answer any questions that you also might have at this time. So he's available, and I turn it back over to you, Mr. Chair. So. Oh, forgive me. Let me also document into the record. The report was released without any inquiry at that particular time, but we did have an inquiry from a Miss Laura Blakeman, identified as Post Office Box 891, Coolidge, Arizona. I did have several emails with her where eventually I described several portions of the project and some of the continuing processes if and when this is approved, and then also shared with her a copy of the staff report. And as of the close of business today, I hadn't heard any additional information, but there was that exchange to put into the record as an inquiry to this project, so.
Thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the commission. My name is Chris Morgan. The engineer on the project. Also here tonight is Tanner Peterson, the owner of the property, and we're available for questions. Thank you.
Give us 1 second.
Mr. Chair, doesn't seem fair to not ask him a question, given all we did on the last one, so. Probably the most important thing is your PAD is already done, so we can make that clear. But proof that we actually, we are looking at that. Sheet 6 of 8, I think this is just somebody's scrolling, but lot 152's got a different character on it. Is that just somebody marked it up and then there's a little asterisk on there? I wasn't sure if that's I've seen that sometimes where somebody's like, oh, we got partial stuff issues, or hey, this is the lot I want.
I have to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know what that is, but it's on my sheet and I printed it from the CAD.
Again, for staff, the public, and everybody else that's tired of hearing me, I just wanted to make sure everybody understood. When we do get the detail, we all look at it, so it was a curiosity question, but Mr. Chair, for staff and then for the applicants, this is an existing PAD that exists. The school has determined, and I think to the applicant's credit, recognizing what's already in the area, not forcing them necessarily multifamily, going back to kind of what's around them. Is that a fair fair statement?
It is a fair statement.
Okay.
And also, going down that same PAD question line of the road widths, we've worked with your staff, and your staff has been very helpful, and we have widened all the roads from what the PAD was approved for to accommodate fire's current concerns of parking on street with still adequate width. So both this project and the project to the east, this is a continuation of the eastern portion. All the roads have been widened to accommodate the new standards.
36 feet, curb to curb.
Correct.
Perfect.
But Chair, we did also check the roadways, Vakai and Skousen. They're minor arterials, and the details here show that, and they're accurate. We have a copy of that.
Well, and since water was the part of the day, this project was in a larger water model with actually the Cross Creek. I actually did the water modeling on it, and so that Cross Creek well number 42 is actually part of the overall agreement that was brought online. There's a whole schedule of the well coming online, storage coming online, pumping coming online, and this is the third phase of Cross Creek, Skousen East, Skousen West is all part of that agreement with Arizona Water. So that's all in place and moving forward.
Nicely done.
Thank you.
You guys have any questions?
I do. I have a question.
Turn the mic
You gotta push a little button.
on. Yeah.
All right. Hello. Normally I wouldn't have a question being my first day here, but I do have one question because I was reading this and the Valkeen Road and Skousen Road with all the housing currently, because I drive those roads to work every day, I've noticed the increase of traffic. So is this proposal include the upgrade, or will it be based on the city of Coolidge as to whether or not Skousen is widened, if there is a light put up at 87 up there? Does this, now that we're in this portion of this
This phase of development,
phase of development,
does that trigger
does that,
something with ADOT?
well, those are, well, Skousen is municipal road, correct?
Yes, yeah, Skousen and Vakai are both
Yeah.
municipal, so we have a red flashing light there because of traffic, and so the half roads, the half arterials will be where it abuts the development will be increased, and that half of the road, and then when the other side is done, then that other half will go. But the corner itself is not
No,
in this document required to have a street light at this point. Now, the city looks at all that, so Public Works Department will look and see if something we need to do.
they will eventually.
Yeah, because of the traffic.
Be looking at that.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. Especially on, what is it, McLean to the west there?
Yes.
Yeah, because 87 was completely blocked off the other day, and we all got rerouted on that little dirt road. That wasn't fun. So, just wondering with the experience of all these people and a lot of people traveling up into the valley.
Yeah, I know the mayor and the governor of Gila River are working on getting a light at Skousen and 87 because of the number of accidents that have happened there. And
Yeah.
So that's
That
taken
part
some
of
years,
the-
and just because we look at all the streets and where the accidents are happening and take into the account, so they're working together to get the state to put that in. And it's already approved, I believe, it's just a matter of getting everything done, and got to widen the canal. I think there's some work that has to be done on that, and so they're in that process. It's just, everybody wants it sooner than it just takes time to get it done.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand that. I just was wondering, because we had discussed it.
Sure.
One about expanding of the roads to deal with
It's a
the
great point.
traffic.
It is. I mean, I drive that corner all the time. That's how I get to work. So I understand.
Thank you.
So some of these road improvements will be incorporated.
Yes, the ones that abut the property that are up against it, the half road improvements will be there and sidewalks and all that. And then the other side of it will be when the other side develops, they'll do their
Where it
portion.
says future improvements.
Yeah, yes, yeah. Because there are some, there's more, there's another portion of Skousen that's above on the other side of the road that I think we have, right?
Page 5 in your report.
I'm on it.
Oh, anyway, it just shows the area around that, so yeah.
Right.
When that develops, they'll do that portion, that side of it. And then you'll have, and then when the commercial takes effect on the corner, then they'll be required to do the improvements. And then we can talk about some lights and things if it's going to bring a lot of additional traffic.
And that project to the east will actually precede this project, because this is just the preliminary plat stage. That project's actually in final engineering. We're nearly done with it. It's, for all intents and purposes, ready to record and build. They're working through Cross Creek first, then the likely progression is Skousen East, then Skousen West. So Skousen, the east side of Skousen Road will be built to half width. Then when this project comes forward, it'll build the west side of the road.
Gotcha. Thank you. That answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody else? No? All right, this too is a public hearing. Right?
Yeah. All within, people within 300.
Mr. Chair, just if there's anyone in the public that would like to, I'd provide them that opportunity.
Okay.
Yeah, it's generally within, people within 300 feet, but as our attorney says, if they want to speak, that's fine.
Certainly. So if anybody in the audience would like to speak on behalf of this project? Sure, please, come to the podium.
Thank you. My name is Kelly Linke. I live on Blakeman Place, right next door to Miss Blakeman that emailed him that he responded to. Exactly what are we looking at in terms of interruption to our, service of the roads and that kind of thing? And if they're only widening where they're building on, what does that look like for the first part that's not included in theirs? It's still going to stay just as bad as it is already. And I do have concerns, just like she did with stoplights and stop signs. People run those constantly, and it is dangerous.
Mr. Chair, what will happen at when that half street is done, it should replace the road that's there, brand new asphalt road up to the edge of that project. We can't make them go all the way down, but that'll improve that section, at least going close to the corner where the Blakeman house is with the portico in front. Right there, it'll stop right in that area. That's as far as we can have them go, but it'll be a 2-lane road there. It'll come up with a sidewalk on the north side.
Okay.
So that part will be improved, and then we'll look at improving, the light and that portion of it. I know Ben and Navarro, they added some flashing stop signs and
Yes, we know.
some yield signs. That was there. They did that throughout different parts of the city. So I don't know if that was a grant or we just had some of that in the capital improvement program. So they're trying to make sure, because we do have police out there stationed because people do some on those. That's when we put the red lights up, because we had accidents there.
Yeah.
And so anytime they don't work, we call right away. And Ben sends his crews out to fix it because it's important.
Yes. thank you.
So thank you for bringing that up.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you.
One more thing is, I'm not sure who to disagree with, but I work for the schools, and that school is very much needed. So I just wanted to add that input. Thank you.
The schools.
All right, at this time, we'll close the call to the public, entertain a motion.
Mr. Chairman, I move that we approve, let me find it. Okay. 220517. I move that we approve Cool PZ 220517 as presented.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, my favorite time of the day, fireside chat with Gilbert.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll be brief. I know we're,
Oh, no.
so,
Tell us the whole story.
no, we're doing some good things. Central Arizona College is working with PS Trucking to provide CDL training. So there was a ribbon cutting about a week and a half ago. Mayor and Steve Miller were out there, and they're actually using the equipment themselves and partnering with the college. So the college has a public-private partnership. And eventually, Steve Miller also said that the county can actually provide equipment under certain grants and things they can do to help with the equipment for training. So as you know, there's a huge shortage of truck drivers in this country. So we think it's a much needed service. So they're doing really, really well. They already have like, I think 6 or 7 students, and so they're doing really well out of there. The Procter & Gamble, they've reached out to us to get the price and for permitting, and they're putting together all the things they need for submittal. But we're going to meet with them probably before Christmas or right after Christmas, talk about where they are in the design program. They own the land. They just, they go through a process internally. They say themselves, they were not quick, but we do it right. And that's the process we use. And he said, we own the land, we're going forward, and everybody wants to see it quickly, but it's just, luckily they're not a startup. They've got a lot of capital and they use it wisely. So we're waiting for the site plan so we can bring it to you for approval and review. And as soon as they get it in, we'll rush it to get it here so we can get them going. So that's going well. In fact, I talked to David Nieves yesterday. He was coming back from vacation. I was calling him for some dates. And I'm also talking to Marshall Parsons, the engineer of record that's working, that's part of Procter & Gamble, but he's working on the building. So he'll be involved with that. Let's see. We're also working, I can't say the name yet. I don't know if I can say the name yet. Where the original Burger King was going to go on the northwest corner of Buckeye Inn and the Boulevard, there's another fast food place that's approached us, and we're working with them to see if they go forward and build that site. So I may have somebody else come in and beat out Burger King getting to market. So that's what I'm hoping for. So, we'd love to see Burger King, but they're still coming, according to them. They've talked.
Well, you alluded to they just bought their chicken fry machine, so
No.
they've got their parts issue handled, right?
Yeah.
So, do they have a timeline for us yet?
You talking about the old
Burger
Circle
King.
K? Oh, the Burger King.
No,
They
Burger
said
King.
they said the beginning during the spring they ordered the equipment. That's what they also told the newspaper. So I had her call them directly. So
Awesome.
yeah, the Pollo place that is the old Circle K. They're just waiting for some approvals from. I believe it's for their fire suppression system.
Paint looks good on that building.
Yeah, the signs are a little too big. We're working in the code limits, and they just went up all of a sudden. They were like, "Oh my God, they're pretty big."
Aren't they required to do a monument type sign?
They have a,
than a
we
pole?
let them keep the old one that was there, so we've done that before with existing businesses, try to help them go through. If we did that, we could make them chop it down, but we allowed them to use it, so that was a decision we made in redevelopment. So I have the ability under the zoning code as the zoning administrator to make the call if it's in the best interest of the city. So I don't make those lightly, I try, because I know they're scrutinized by everybody, so I try to be fair. And so anyway, and then let's see, what else do we have? Nikola, we're still working with them. They're rolling out their hydrogen truck. Let's see.
Hey, I got something to tell you about Nikola.
Yes.
They got an open house Saturday, the 16th, from 11 to 1.
Oh, awesome. They had we got their truck in the Veterans Parade, and the mayor got to ride in it, so it was pretty cool. I got pictures of them. But they ran that truck in the parade, and they brought it in, the hydrogen truck. Not the Trade Electric is also running, but this is the hydrogen truck. Halcala, we're working with them. We got the right-of-way signed for the corner of Skousen and Martin that Langley's going to keep as commercial. So we've been working on getting the right-of-way acquired for that, and so that's done. I believe it was recorded today, yesterday. Yeah, so that's moving forward. We're seeing that. Let's see. Century Complete bought some lots from Oakwood and is continue to build homes in Cross Creek. So we made sure the design was equal or better than what's there, because Cross Creek is a little higher end product with Richmond American and some of that. So they have a variety of products. So we made sure we looked at it, Phil and I, and made sure that they met the design standards of the other house. It looked pretty nice so far. So they're continuing on to develop more houses. And just a lot of information. We're working a lot with the different companies coming in that want to see iPads, and so like Global came in, we worked with APS, Global, Southwest Gas, provide those contacts, and then see how much water they use, and are they the right company for the product, for the area. You know, if they use so much water, they take all of it up, we certainly raise a flag and say, oh, okay. So we're working on that all the time. I just responded, how many, two? Just last week. And then we're responding to some that I just got back that I'm submitting tomorrow. So, and sometimes we compete against different places. Some we compete with other states. Sometimes it's the West Valley. Sometimes it's Casa Grande. But it's just we just put our best foot forward and put in to see if we can get those projects. Some are really good. So that's all I have at this point. And a lot of permits. I mean, we still have permits going. So.
Did you ever hear anything back from Eloy after they came and cried about us moving in on their area?
Commissioner, we discussed, we did talk to them, and they know that general plans overlap in certain areas, and we pointed out.
Gilbert, I'm gonna stop right there. I don't want to go down any rabbit hole or discussion.
No more
It's
rabbit
not,
hole.
yeah,
I'm
not
sorry.
on the agenda. I
I
don't
forgot
want
the TV
to.
was still on.
I think we're good.
They were good. That's fine.
Good.
Mr. Chair, a couple of things real quick, because the attorney can throw it at me. First, I'd like to recognize that the chairman's granddaughter has been in the audience the entire time, giving us her precious time as a student. So I just wanted to highlight her. I'm sure your grandpa was going to, but I'm going to take the thunder away from him. So I want to say that. Second, I wanted to also point out, and maybe this would have been better for public, this will be my last planning commission meeting. I will be tendering my resignation to the council at the end of the month. So my apologies, you're going to have to go through yet another selection committee. I've accepted a position at a federal agency in Washington State. It's got 3 letters, but the good news is I'll still be working on behalf of water and these kinds of areas. And if you'll indulge me, a couple of things I'd like to say. I have served on, like Gilbert has, a number of committees associated with planning. I don't know that I've ever run across a group of folks who are more plugged in at this level as volunteers and what's going on to my right and to my left. And I appreciate the opportunity I've had to cause some frustrations. I'm excited about what Coolidge is going to be under your watchful eye. And I would just urge as we a little bit discussed this evening, that just because it's development doesn't necessarily mean it's good development. You're doing great things, and I am looking forward to viewing from afar, and I'll visit because I got to ask you some folks, but I just wanted to make sure, Mr. Chair, to express my gratitude to staff and my fellow commissioners for the education I've received, and I wish you all much success moving into the future. So thank you.
And if you go through the Tri-Cities, give him a call.
We too, Shane, let me say from the rest of us that we appreciate you. We've appreciated your time, your candid banter, we might say. But no, your insightfulness, invaluable. Thank you, sir.
From staff's perspective, we'd like to say thank you and appreciate all your hard work. Your knowledge on water is invaluable. I don't know if anybody has, enough information about water. It's so important to our future. So thank you so much. We appreciate you serving, and all of you for serving, especially our new members too coming on board. So thank you and best of luck. And it rained over there a lot, so I don't know. It's just raining quite a bit.
Well, you would
A lot of
expect.
water to manage.
Yeah, you would expect this from me, the organizations I'll be representing. There's that entire Columbia River, but they decided to focus on the much smaller river that only runs so often. So, yeah, I like challenging aspects, but thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it. Yeah, when you're coming through the Tri-City area in Washington, if you and your grandpa are running through and you need a pit stop, he's got my number, so.
Be sure to take a raincoat and an umbrella.
Maybe a hammer and some nails. Noah built an ark after 40 days and 40 nights.
Well, I can. Got to call the public.
All right, let's wrap this thing up. We'll do our call to the public. Anybody from the public would like to step to the podium? Still no takers?
All one family back there.
All righty. I'll take a motion to adjourn.
Mr. Chairman, I move we adjourn.
I'll second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Good night, everybody.
Thank you all. Good night, and have a Christmas. If we don't
Oh, that's
talk
right.
before then. Yeah, the holidays are here.
That's
so.
right. Merry Christmas.